Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the MHA What If with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Deku Embraced His Dark Heritage? All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. UA was the hero school. The most important, the most famous, and so on. UA produced hundreds of pro heroes in the past, including close to half of the current top 10. It was even the alma mater of All Might, the greatest of all heroes and the symbol of peace. It was a dream. Midoriya Izuku's dream. For many, many years he dreamed of being able to walk its halls and training areas. He loved the heroes, especially All Might. His mom once told him to just open an All Might-themed museum. He had that much limited edition merch laying around at home. Finally, he managed to realize this dream and got into UA. With many prospective heroes, each of them armed with a wonderful quirk and an unyielding desire to make the world a better place. And a seriously sleep-deprived teacher that was also an underground hero that he happened to be a fan of. Midoriya Izuku sets the volume to the max and starts speaking. "My name is Legion, and we are the League of Villains," he announces, the last of his comrades exiting Kurogyari behind him. "We've decided to interrupt your training exercise in order to kill the symbol of peace. Although, it seems he's absent." Unfortunately, Midoriya is the only one to appreciate the level of irony that his life is operating on. He is even wearing his favorite All Might hoodie. Eraserhead shouts to 13 to get the students out and then charges down the stairs. A tactical mistake. Sure, there are only a few villains in the USJ main plaza. Sure, they all look barely older than the shocked students crowding next to the entrance. But he is still severely underestimating the people that broke into UA. Kurogyari, scatter the students. Izuku commands, his mask changing his voice. True to his villain's name, he set it to change his voice every few seconds. The initial announcement was the only thing he would say with his true voice during the attack. Decay and Vampire, intercept. His best friend and his probably not a girlfriend leap forward, engaging a pro hero in melee combat. Knife and Disintegration versus Combat Scarf and a lot of combat experience. Izuku is worried. Extremely worried. Eraserhead is an expert in capture and can deactivate quirks merely by looking at you. He is as famous as an underground hero could get. Thankfully, the mask stops Izuku from stuttering and making other noises that are seriously unbecoming of an aspiring criminal mastermind. On the other hand, it is a horrible matchup for the underground hero. Vampire fights de facto quirkless and is very good at it. Decay's quirk requires 5-finger contact and is potent enough to end the fight in a single touch, and with Vampire there, Eraserhead can't keep it offline constantly, as it would allow the shape-shifting villain to blindside him. However, Eraserhead is still a professional hero, with many tricks up his sleeve. He has that object resembling a scarf that is clearly a very advanced and skill-based capture weapon. It had to take years to master it to this level, and Legion. Kurogyari appears out of nowhere, interrupting Izuku's mumbling, "Thank God for the voice alteration thing." There is a lot of soot on the Warper's body armor. 13 is incapacitated. The Ingenium's brother got out. "I sent all the students from the list to the ambush site, but one of them." "Yes, I can see him," Izuku replies, feeling the incoming headache as clean as day. The explosions and screams are rather noticeable. He didn't intend to fight his old bully during the attack. It would hurt Kaken much more to be teleported away and safely incapacitated by the second team. With ego as fragile as his, treating him as if he wasn't worthy of attention would be crushing. But since he wants to do it so much? "Bakugu, stop!" Eraserhead shouts. He could have just as well tried bargaining with a landslide. Its intelligence level and attention spans were comparable with Izuku's quirkest bully. He goes for the head, of course. Starting with a punch. Straight one. With his right arm. Like always. Izuku grabs it and throws Kaken over his head, drawing a knife. It is stopped centimeters away from his old bully's face with Eraserhead's capture scarf, extended to the max. You really are a great hero, Eraserhead, Izuku announces, while Vampire stabs the now defenseless teacher in his right side. Secretly, he is relieved. The hand moved on his own. He didn't plan to almost murder a kid. That would go against the League's long-term goals. Kaken has enough situational awareness to use his explosions to escape from the trap. Decay grabs the underground hero's head with all but one of his fingers and rams it into the pavement. Tenko's love for excessive violence is there all along, although he is kind enough to not overdo it, and sticks to the plan. I wouldn't move if I were you, Eraserhead, Izuku announces. The teacher halts his attempts at struggling and stares at him. Decay's quirk is a 5-point finger matter disintegration. He has all but a single finger on your head. If you move too much and make the fifth one touch you, he shrugs. Hopefully this will be enough. He isn't here to kill Eraserhead. Oh, and thank you for distracting your teacher with your antics. He turns towards his former bully. He wants to savor the moment. Kaken. The look on Bakugo's face is priceless when the recognition settles in. The positive side of being officially dead, together with all your loved ones, is that you don't need to hide your name when you turn to villainy. DKU? And now he is reminded why he hates Kaken so much. If he didn't tailor his plan explicitly to avoid non-pro hero casualties, he would have sent Tenko after him. Seeing his bully vanish into dust would be quite cathartic. You quirkless bastard. Die. He leaps forward, accelerating himself with micro-explosions. Izuku didn't think that it was possible. But somehow Kaken got worse when he wasn't looking. When he examined his actions from the perspective of time, they haven't seen each other ever since the house fire that killed the Midoriyas. He realized that Bakugo was basically an angry meme made flesh rather than a human being. And somehow, just somehow, he got worse. And even more one-dimensional. Unbelievable. Mustard, gas him. The last member of the party pulls up a support item resembling a flamethrower and covers the charging student in poisonous gas. It isn't a dose enough to kill him, not in a single burst. But it is enough to make him lose control over his limbs and fall to the ground. He was too focused on Izuku to notice the attack, apparently. So, can I dust him? Tenko announces in the resulting silence. I want the EXP. Eraserhead looks suitably distraught and cornered. Izuku is happy about his best friend's acting skills. Or at least he hopes that Tenko is acting. His desire for destruction and murder are a feature rather than a problem normally, but Izuku can't help but be worried about it right now. They are only planning a single murder today, and it's not Eraserhead. Oh, no need to go that far, Decay, Izuku says. His mask once again proves useful. It made him sound like a confident mastermind instead of a slightly terrified teenager with a complicated family situation who is way over his head. I'd like some information from you, Eraserhead. Where is the symbol of peace? According to our intel, he should be participating in this training session. But I don't see him. Eraserhead doesn't have time to answer. The entrance bursts open. Fear not. The giant announces with a voice that could shake a mountain. For I am here. He's here. The symbol of peace. The #1 hero. The All-Might. Izuku almost drools for the occasion to see his favorite hero in person. The massive figure radiates both immense strength and undescribable charisma. Makes villains tremble and civilians feel that everything will be alright. Then Izuku remembers that he is a villain, and that the League has organized distractions to keep All Might occupied elsewhere during the attack, since despite their boisterous claims, they weren't here to fight him. Izuku blue screens. This isn't part of the plan. Kurogyri, get Hellhound, he shouts, his voice changer making him sound urgent but not panicked. The warp gate opens up and something massive enters the field. The quadrupedal monstrosity of claws and fur, designed with destruction in mind. The most successful second-generation Numu to date. It is massive and inhuman enough to give the symbol of peace a pause. For about 2 seconds. Then he charges towards it, too fast for the eyes to follow. His first punch generates enough air pressure to make Tenko fly off Eraserhead, who immediately jumps backward, gaining some ground. He is limping noticeably, his costume stained with blood. Not fit for combat anymore. Unfortunately for the heroes, Hellhound doesn't seem to notice the punch. Hellhound is a bioengineered superweapon designed to fight you at your strongest, all might. Izuku announces. Good bluff was a key to success. Then again, what is he supposed to say? Sorry, I've panicked so much that I had Kurogiri warp in my house dog that has temper issues worse than Kakin and some illegal upgrades? He has an image to uphold, even if the plan is going to hell. All Might doesn't even flinch. He unleashes a flurry of blows. Hellhound is tanking them nicely, its shock absorption holding well. The strength behind the attack is still potent enough to push it back slightly, and each time it attempts to lunge at the symbol of peace with his fangs and claws, the attack is either pushed back or deflected. The battle is too intense for anyone to interfere. But eventually it ends. All Might overwhelms the shock absorption and sends Hellhound flying through the roof. Izuku stares in awe, thinking that All Might is truly the coolest of heroes. Then he reminds himself that the hero just punched out Hellhound and is about to defeat the League. The second team picks that very moment to send him a message. A picture displays itself at the side of his vision, Mind's crew, Gentle Criminal and Gremlin making the victory signs next to several incapacitated students. This has to wait. So, villains. All Might stands up, surrounded by clouds of dust. Are you going to surrender peacefully? Your superweapon is done for, after all. Is he giving them time to surrender, because he can see that most of his enemies were underage? Izuku figures it out. And screams in terror. At least internally. They are so much off the plan that they might as well have no plan at all. By sheer stroke of luck, that is the moment when he gets a message that the other teachers, and Thunderbolt, the number 3 hero, are almost at the USJ. 4 minutes until the second phase of the original plan can be executed. As Tenko would say, they were getting a continue. He just has to buy some time to make it look natural. Surrender? Izuku asks. How about this? If you manage to knock one of us out, the rest will surrender and fully cooperate with the police. He can see the sudden sweat on All Might's face. Few of the students left near the USJ entrance are administering first aid to Eraserhead, who seems to have collapsed due to blood loss. Izuku didn't even notice that until now. All Might was really good at drawing attention. Izuku should have asked Eraserhead for an autograph instead of trying to interrogate him. Now the occasion is clearly lost. The students felt safe to do that, despite the villain presence near them, as the All Might was there. Major miscalculation, though understandable considering that it was All Might. I would prefer to not use my strength against children. All Might is good at acting. Really good. But he doesn't know that Legion knows about his limits. You prefer to not use your strength? Or are you unable to do it? Cornering All Might is giving him a rather complicated set of emotions. Sure, he isn't trying to kill him, it would be counterproductive to the League's long-term goals, to begin with. Besides, All Might is his idol. But he has to do it, and if he is doing it he can as well do it well. No quirk is without weaknesses. Izuku speaks confidently. Quirks are his hobby. He loves talking about them, even in such circumstances. Yours is extremely powerful, and appears to be infinitely versatile. There is only a single potential weakness of it that I can think of. You have either a time limit or have a stamina bar, as my friend Decay would say. Which is why I organized all those beautiful distractions for you, in order to tire you out before the attack. He sees All Might's face flinch, confirming his suspicions. And then I sent in the Hellhound with its shock absorption quirk, to weaken you further. So here's my theory, you aren't punching our lights out, because you can barely stand upright? Silence. The students next to Eraserhead, and a conscious but paralyzed Bagu, look at either Izuku or All Might with growing dread on their faces. They can't believe his words, he is a villain after all. One previously unknown, all members of the League were previously unknown, it is their debut mission. Only Gentle has a reputation, but he was technically hired for the job. But All Might is still standing there, instead of taking them down in a split second. 10 seconds until the teachers arrive. He bought enough time with his villainous monologue. Decay, vampire, kill him, he shouts. Their attack is delayed by a further second as they are trying to comprehend why Izuku, the All Might's #1 fanboy, just told them to kill his idol. Then they decide that he has a plan, so they lunge forward. Kurogyri, Phase 2, he says to the living warp gate. The cloud shifts itself as it prepares for the sudden warp. The teachers burst into the USJ. They are all pro-heroes, so they waste no time. Snipe fires at Tenko. First bullet goes through his hand, making Decay yell in pain and jump back from All Might. The next 2 bullets hit Kurogyri's suddenly opened warp gate and emerge from another part of his body, right behind Snipe's back. It isn't a mortal wound, but for now, the League of Villains can cross one of the heroes out. Too bad this tactic wouldn't work for a third time. 13 and Snipe were enough. Midnight rushes forward, whip in one hand while the other is ready to unleash her quirk. Present Mike runs sideways, towards the position that would allow him to use his quirk without hitting All Might or the students. Cementos conjures a 100-meter-long wall of concrete, separating the League from the All Might. Izuku breathes a sigh of relief. Vampire and Decay retreat. Then comes Thunderbolt, the current number 3 hero, and one of the lackeys of the Hero Commission. As far as Izuku's knowledge goes, he was regularly inspecting the UA at Commission's behest as a form of additional oversight over the notoriously independent school. Nedzu's empire is small, but people in power are suitably worried about it. He wears a rather unoriginal costume, resembling all those pre-quirked speedster superheroes. He even has some Thunderbolt decorations over it. Really uninspired, and Izuku suspects that he has stolen most of it from an old hero, a clock. But you don't become a number 3 hero by being incompetent. Izuku questions his morals and aesthetics, but not combat skills. He immediately recognizes Izuku as the ringleader, or perhaps Ingenium's brother described him as such, and goes after him. He is fast. Faster than All Might, though lacks his resistance and sheer strength. Of course, getting hit by something at Mach whatever is going to knock Izuku out instantly, even if the person behind it would be easily crushed by a quirkless bodybuilder if immobilized. But Izuku knows that he is coming. And unlike everything else today, this is personal. And the reason for the League's attack. Reflex boost. Overhaul. He feels something in his body change, as it accommodates the quirks he calls upon. Thunderbolt crosses the 100 meters distance in a heartbeat, his leg going for Izuku's head to knock him out instantly. Reflex boost gives him enough of a reaction time to raise his hand in defense. His hand touches the incoming Thunderbolt's leg for an instant, and that is enough. Overhaul requires nothing more. Thunderbolt, the number 3 hero, is instantly splattered over half of the USJ. Bakugo, who is the closest to Izuku when it happens, is painted red. Only his eyes are spared from the recoloring. Always so hot-blooded, Izuku, who is trembling internally from shock, terror and joy, announces in the dead silence. Although it's just blooded now, I guess. He has no idea what he just said. He isn't exactly conscious. And internally he is freaking out just as much as everyone around him. Vampire stares at him like he just descended from the heavens, introduced himself as a god of blood and proposed to her while offering her half of his godhood. Students and half-conscious Eraserheads stare at him in terror. Even the other teachers halt their advance, trying to comprehend what just happened. Someone, a student most likely, screams. What, too soon? Izuku decides to dig his grave deeper. Oh well. Kurogyri, we're leaving. The warp gate embraces him seconds before the present mixed sonic attack. That was Vampire, known also as Himiko Toga. He isn't letting his friends be villains without proper villain names, says in the resulting silence. Fucking awesome. Decay, also Tenko Shimura, finishes for her. His hand is already fixed. Overhaul was an infinitely useful quirk, almost as overpowered as One for All in Izuku's opinion. They all finish changing. They still had a lot of laundry to do, but it could wait. Oh please. Izuku looks down, not really sure how to react. The plan almost failed. I didn't expect All Might to show up, and if I didn't have Hellhound prepared just in case, we would all end up being captured. Also, Eraserhead was taken down by accident, since Kaken, he pauses, because Himiko leans towards him and lands a kiss on his cheek. He blushes. A lot. Mask and clothes intercepted the majority of the blood, and he washed off whatever made it past them, but Himiko could still smell it on him. And he knows how it makes her act. It is going to be a long day. Tenko mumbles something about fucking normies and decides to play on his console. Since Izuku fully understands the woes of an introvert within a group of people, he lets him do that. Mustard decides to join Tenko, which is probably better than hearing him rant about that damn elite school not being able to do a thing about him. Izuku switches on the TV, a necessary part of the living area of the villainous headquarters, and watches the news with Himiko at his side. He doubts that anything safe for All Might level of strength could pry her off him. The attack on UA was already reported, police and paramedics are swarming the complex, hard to hide something like that, but nobody knows what exactly happened. Warp Gate opens up in the middle of the bar. Kurogiri brings back Gentle, Gremlin and Mind's crew. The rest of his party, which he had sent after the students whom he deemed as potential threats. Like Endeavor's son, they are good at taking down people without hurting them. Izuku refuses to hurt students. Save for Kaken, but he kinda deserves that. And even in his case, he prefers to do it without lasting bodily damage. Psychological damage stings more. Gremlin is, of course, hyperactive. She crosses the distance between them and yanks him from Himiko's embrace, resulting in a loud "that's not fair," coming from behind his back, although somehow the resident vampire manages to retain the hold on his arm in order to face him. Face him from a very close distance. Her concept of personal space was thrown through the window years ago. How did my baby work? There is way too much pink hair way too close to his eyes, in Izuku's opinion. Did they hurt it? It worked great? Izuku replies in his voice. It's not damaged. And neither am I, thank you for asking. Himiko giggles behind him. Mustard laughs openly. Now please, put your taser sword back in the sheath before approaching people, okay? He almost got hit by it, and he knows from experience that it would ruin the day for him. Oh okay. She backs down. Somewhat. Izuku's voice-altering mask is Mei Hatsum's newest baby and she is an extremely protective mother. Going to the workshop now, see you later. Then she is gone. So, how did it go? Mind's crew decides to ask. He was in charge of the second party, mostly because Gremlin is no commander material and Gentle was, well, he is gentle. Izuku kinda expected him to forget about the plan and end up in fierce discussion over tea brands with Yayarosa's heir if she mentioned her love for it during the battle. Besides, he was merely borrowed by the League for the operation. Izuku prefers giving commanding positions to regular members. He needs to learn how to delegate. And they need to learn how to command when he isn't around. He is standing behind Mind's crew, probably giggling internally for all the new content he is going to publish with La Brava once she finishes downloading the camera feed from USJ. But she isn't here, so he restrains himself. Too well. Izuku replies. Thunderbolt dead. Snipe, Eraserhead and 13 badly wounded. But All Might was actually there, so I totally panicked because oh my god that's All Might, so I had Kurogiri summon Hellhound and... His voice suddenly halts as Mind's crew, Quirk takes hold. Take 3 deep, slow breaths. Mind's crew, Hitoshi Shinso, says. Izuku follows, before the brainwashing's hold on him breaks. Okay, sorry for starting to ramble. Izuku takes another deep breath. We almost killed All Might by accident. Hitoshi and Gentle stare at him, trying to comprehend what he just said. Izuku isn't surprised. He was there but he still can't process what happened. I thought he would simply not show up after all the distractions we've made. But he ended up forcing through his limit. Izuku continues. Which is really cool and very heroic and I totally love him for that, but, He raises his hand, stopping Toshi from what was going to be another brainwashing session. He can calm himself down, if he really wants to. He ran out of strength punching out Hellhound, and tried to bluff his way out of it. I went on a villain monologue to buy time until Thunderbolt arrived, but I think that a lot of UA students now know that he has a time limit, which isn't that much of a problem. Gentle announces. All Might is a giant, the symbol of peace. Naturally, there is nobody out there who would believe in him having limits. Fair point. It took Izuku himself a while to believe in it, and he had an extremely trustworthy source of information. Now excuse me, but I believe that I have tea to drink. And shaking hands to calm down. Gentle is a terrifyingly dangerous combatant, but also a big softy. Before he joined Mr. Compress Crew, he was busy making a mess in front of cameras in shops that sold subpar merchandise, and thoroughly, but non-lethally, beating the heroes that tried to stop him. Kurogyri warps in again. I recovered Hellhound, he announces before heading towards the bar. La Brava is back too. Gentle Criminal proves that Kurogyri isn't the only teleporter around by vanishing instantly. Izuku silently congratulates himself for giving Hellhound a GPS collar. Those remaining in the bar celebrate with a toast. Kurogyri, the League of Villains' unofficial nanny, refuses to hand alcohol to the minors. With Gentle gone, the only other adult is Tenko, who preferred energy drinks to alcohol. Celebrating their villain debut with soda is decidedly unvillainous. He agrees with Himiko's plan to take him, and both Hitoshi and Tenko, for some karaoke in the evening. Her attempts on making the least sociable members of the League have at least some social interactions, planning how to tear down society as they know it apparently isn't social enough, continue, despite the grumbling they cause. After a quick video conference with the doctor concerning the Hellhound's performance and repairs, Izuku asks Kurogyri to warp him home. It is time for the family drama to start. There is still a chance that he wouldn't make it to the karaoke. He just had to not survive the family meeting. Detective Naomasa Tsukachi really likes his job. Sure, it often exposes him to the nasty handiwork of many villains, but he is mostly working in Mizudafu. In the shadow of Yue. There are still some local villains, but ever since All for One was punched to death, very few heavy hitters dared to show up in the city. Nedzu made an example out of the few that tried. That bear-slash-mouse-slash-rat hero is terrifying when angry. Which is why the detective thinks he had heard a very elaborate joke when someone told him that the police and paramedics were just called to UA due to someone attacking it directly. Soon it turns out that it isn't a very elaborate joke. More like someone's very elaborate suicide. He arrives at UA in a crowd of policemen. He quickly leaves the conventional work to Sansa, as he is cordially invited to the Recovery Girl office. Which is bad, since he expected All Might to meet with him first, and he can think of a very few reasons for the symbol of peace to not rush to greet his old friend. But then he sees Sir Night-Eye waiting by the office entrance and his reaction quickly goes from surprise to badly covered panic. Mirai. He nods to the pro-hero. They had fought together against the symbol of evil, helping dismantle his empire bit by bit. Few years of minimal contact didn't change a lot. They respect each other's skills and dedication to their jobs. Naomasa? He gets a scarce nod back. Sir Night-Eye isn't the most expressive of people out there. He knows that much. The detective tries to evaluate how bad the situation is. From the look on Night-Eye's face, that he got to see many, many times during their campaign against All for One, it seems to be 11 on the 1 to 10 scale. Is he? The words fail to come through. But the hero understands. He is all right. But apparently, it was close. Night-Eye replies. Close enough for Nedzu to call me, and for All Might to not protest against it? 11 turns to 15 in the detective's mind. The door opens. Recovery Girl peeks out. Come in. All Might, frankly speaking, looks like shit. Which is rather reassuring as he looked like that ever since his fight against his fated nemesis. There are no new wounds, but he is clearly exhausted and vomiting blood from time to time. Nedzu is there too. He is working on a laptop, either checking through the security records or plotting the downfall of mankind. He is drinking tea, of course. When Naomasa looks at his old friend, All Might shows him 4 fingers. Fourth tea. 15 turns to 50. If he was the object of Nedzu's anger, with that intensity, he would spare himself pain and kill himself on the spot. So can someone explain to me what happened? Naomasa asks. It sounds like a better option than waiting until All Might and Sir Night-Eye acknowledge their presence in the room. Those two are just a pain to watch. Villain attack. Nedzu speaks. It's something in the scarce movements of his nose, but Naomasa recognizes fury when he sees it. One of them had a warp quirk, and they used it to teleport into the USJ. They also managed to hack into our network. Enough to make UA as a whole unaware of the attack. Frankly speaking, if one of the students didn't make it out with a warning, we would have failed to respond. So an organized group of people with access to very good hackers and a warp gate quirk. Plus, of course, balls to actually attack Nedzu's stronghold. Even All for One generally considered it, together with the National Diet Building and Tartarus Prison, to not be worth the effort. Pretty bad. Especially with Japan being the burning mess that it was right now. Horrible timing. At least they didn't go after the students. Recovery Girl adds, her words followed by a loud and tired sigh. A few of them got electrocuted into unconsciousness, but not a single one was wounded. Wish I could say the same about the teachers. Eraserhead, Snipe and 13 are all in the hospital. They should make a full recovery, but they took quite the beating. Night Eye is silently observing them all. Naomasa might have worked with him for years, yes. But he never really figured out what was happening in his mind. Honestly, he never even wanted to. The man was an oddity, and that was the most gentle way of phrasing it he could think of. What about Thunderbolt? Naomasa asks. He is the Hero Commission's representative in the school. I'm not sure if we can have a talk this important without him. Personally, Naomasa absolutely hated the man, but he had to ask. He didn't expect the deathly silence. What? He asks, hoping that it isn't what he thinks it is. The villain leader has, All Might says before coughing up some blood. Let's just say that they'll have to bury Thunderbolt in a closed coffin. Naomasa doesn't want to hear that someone murdered the number 3 hero in his district. He really, truly doesn't want to hear it. He already fought one war and he isn't looking forward to another one. More like a bottle. Recovery Girl comments. We'll need to run DNA tests to even confirm his death. The villain practically liquidated him. There is something nasty in her face. She is one of the kindest people Naomasa ever knew, but she absolutely hated Thunderbolt. She wasn't alone in that feeling. Thunderbolt was a glory hound who had an entire cemetery in his closet. But he was untouchable because he was always ready to do whatever the Hero Public Safety Commission told him to. Wonderful. Naomasa replies. So I suspect that we'll get some special governmental representative to pester us and override my every decision in the course of this investigation. I fucking love Mondays. He forgot to drink his morning coffee today. He regrets it immensely. Probably. Nedzu replies finally. Which is why I'm going to be running my own investigation, preferably with Sir Night Eye, and you'll be busy telling me what said governmental representative will be doing. The principal seems to be on the warpath. Sir Night Eye appears ready to join him. Naomasa swears to himself to never again forget about his coffee on Monday. How many attackers? Night Eye finally speaks. Any known faces? Straight to the business. 9. Nedzu replies. Called themselves the League of Villains and announced that they came to kill the symbol of peace. Only one of them familiar, gentle criminal, occasional co-worker of the levelers. Unless he had a breakout with Mr. Compress, he was probably either borrowed or hired for the job. I assume it happened due to him having a very competent hacker by his side known as La Brava. Levelers are all Robin Hood-styled thieves that go after the wealthy, especially with connections to the heroes, and give most of their spoils to the poor. Mr. Compress is rather infamous, although low on the list of priority of heroes and police in Japan. Gentle Criminal is much less infamous, but he has an online following if Naomasa remembers it correctly. Nobody bothers to acknowledge the flinch on Nightai's face when Nedzu mentions the League of Villains mission. The man's obsessive worship of All Might is old news. So 8 previously unknown but obviously highly dangerous villains? Naomasa summarizes. When can I interrogate the captives? It will be very useful. And with All Might, Thunderbolt and the faculty, it's practically guaranteed that the villain's strike force was butchered. He curses mentally when he sees Nedzu and All Might make the face. Don't tell me. They escaped. All Might finally admits. The leader called for general retreat after Thunderbolt was killed. Everyone was too stunned by his death to pursue them, so they had a few seconds to teleport away. Leaving no one behind, Nedzu finishes his tea. Recovery Girl immediately hands him another one. It is a PR nightmare, a humiliation unheard of in UA history. Nedzu is going to go on one of his legendary crusades of covert destruction over this. No questions asked. He will find everyone involved in the raid and make an example out of them. You let them escape? Night Eye is furious. He was glaring at All Might, probably pissed off by how Yagi managed to leave a stain on the symbol of peace's good name. On the UA grounds, out of all places. I was a bit too busy surviving to pursue them, Mirai. All Might retorts with anger. If the teachers arrived 5 seconds later, I'd be dead. I had no strength left to go after them, and their leader timed the retreat perfectly. Come again. Night Eye is frozen. In a bad way. Recovery Girl somehow manages to conjure a cup of coffee for the detective, and he is infinitely thankful to her. It is going to get ugly, especially with All Might apparently almost dying. Their leader, Legion, managed to figure out that I have a time limit. Yagi admits he staged several villain attacks and other emergencies around UA today to tire me out. And when I arrived at USJ, he sent some bioengineered superweapon with what I believe to be a shock absorption quirk. By the time I punched it out of the building, I barely had enough energy left to stand. So I tried to bluff, and he called it. All Might sighs and coughs a bit of blood. If he did it a few seconds earlier, or if other teachers arrived a few seconds later, I'd be dead. So, a newly emergent supervillain who knew of All Might's weakness, and has managed to not only infiltrate the probably most secure place in Japan but also retreat from it without losing a single member. And had the means to defeat the symbol of peace while doing so. This is no longer just a PR nightmare. It is just a nightmare. And the detective can't find a way to wake up from it. And it was also a bunch of kids. All Might adds bitterly. Half of the villains I saw seemed to be of the same age as the UA students. Including Legion himself, at least judging by his stature. That probably explains why Nedzu was stuffing himself with a crisis amount of tea. If the tales about Nedzu that he heard from Yagi and Night Eye in the past were any indication, the Rat Bear is probably imagining all the wonderful things he could do if those villains decided to be heroes instead and tried to join UA. Nobody can question their level of competence. And Nedzu would have loved to have someone like Legion as his personal student. Water under the bridge now. I have a theory. Nedzu announces suddenly. Everyone in the room flinches. When Nedzu has a theory, it is best to hide. Preferably outside the country. I don't think that they planned to kill you, All Might. Rather, they were going after Thunderbolt. They what? All Might looks like he isn't sure what he just heard. Sir Night Eye appears to be simply insulted by the idea of someone ignoring the symbol of peace and going after someone else in their presence. They hacked into the security network deep enough to know exactly when the teachers were going to reach the USJ. The Rat Bear announces. Legion acted like a man of few words during the whole incident. He made exactly one villain monologue, which mysteriously lasted exactly as long as the time needed for the teachers and Thunderbolt to arrive. He seems to be an excellent tactician, so why did he tell Decay and Vampire to attack you 5 seconds after the window of opportunity to kill you closed in? And why didn't they press their attack after Thunderbolt got killed, and instead immediately retreated? If they warped their other party in, they would have had a chance of overwhelming the faculty. What about all those distractions? And that monster, Hellhound? All Might doesn't seem persuaded. You responded to all but 3 hero emergencies in the area, All Might. Nedzu replies. They were handled by other heroes. But if they didn't show up and you responded to even a single one of them, you wouldn't make it to the USJ in time. I suspect that they were just as surprised with you being there as we were with their attack. What's more, if I hadn't demanded that Thunderbolt should go together with the school's staff, he would have rushed ahead and gotten killed without the League having to battle the teachers. Sounds like an excellent plan. Night Eye admits with a deep frown. One that didn't survive the contact with the enemy, but they managed to improvise enough to pull it off. Improvising and bluffing in front of the symbol of peace was an achievement equaling creation of a plan to invade the UA, in the detective's opinion. I'm more worried about that Hellhound. Nedzu admits. 5-meter-long beasts resembling wolves capable of going toe-to-toe with the symbol of peace aren't something common. It was warped in when All Might arrived, so I believe it was some form of contingency plan in case of All Might making it to the battle. Probably something to delay him while the rest warped away. The Rat Bear doesn't have to add that any organization capable of fielding such a beast as a contingency plan is bad news. Worst of all, it was a previously unknown organization with completely unknown operatives. It was an unprecedented situation, for as far as detectives' memory goes. Any other leads? Naomasa asks. No, the Rat Bear replies. Naomasa's quirk tells him that it was a lie. Probably something Nedzu wants to keep outside of the government's attention. Kurogiri warps Izuku back to his room, which is very, very considerate of him. The room hadn't changed. His debut as a villain didn't make the All Might posters and other merch suddenly go up in flames. The All Might clock on his bedside table tells him he arrived 20 minutes ahead of schedule. So he quickly switches his computer on and checks the news. Then he quickly confirms that the present was ready. Izuniken? He hears right after a very faint knock on his door. I am here. Izuku replies with vigor and his best All Might impression. His sister immediately storms in her favorite All Might onesie, and goes for a hug. That he of course gives her, while suppressing the slight ouch when her horn almost stabs him. Midoriya Eri deserves all the hugs in the world, and everyone who claims otherwise should be fed to the Hellhound. So, how was your day? Izuku asks and braces for a tsunami of words. 10 minutes of cute monologue later, the two of them leave his room and go downstairs. Mom is thoroughly surprised when they show up on the exact same moment when Dad emerges from the kitchen with a birthday cake. She cries. A lot. Izuku inherited that part of her, although to a much lesser degree. Didn't stop Tenko from complaining about Izuku wasting the league's budget on tissues, although to be honest Tenko complained about everything. Mustard told him that if the league wanted to save some money, it could cut down on both the tissues and the computer games. Tenko didn't speak to him for weeks. They eat the cake together, chatting happily. Then comes the time for the presents. Father's present is a really expensive spa and onsen visit. Eri gives her a crown of flowers that she made herself. Hisashi and Inko both agree that it is the bestest present ever and Eri positively beams. Izuku switches the TV on. Eri remembers their agreement and quickly vanishes from the room. She is a bit too young for what is going to happen. Hisashi and Inko both stare at him questioningly, so he gestures to them to sit beside him on the couch. The news start. A previously unknown organization known as the League of Villains has launched a daring raid on UA using a warp quirk this morning. The news anchor announces. Pro heroes Snipe and 13 as well as an undisclosed underground hero were hospitalized after engaging them in battle. Before the villains could get their hands on the Hero Corps students present at the scene, the number 3 hero, Thunderbolt, arrived. He managed to delay the attackers until All Might arrived, but suffered fatal wounds at the hands of the villain lead. He hears Inko inhale deeply. He looks at her with his best smile. Happy birthday, Mom. The hug that he gets after this almost makes him follow Thunderbolt. Izuku. The tears that accompany the wail are the happy ones, he can tell. Before Izuku was born, Midoriya Inko was a villain. Quite an infamous one, in fact, but she retired from this life when Izuku was 2 years old. Less than 1 year after that, an undisclosed hero messed up and started a fire that killed Inko's sister and left her paralyzed from the waist down, a state that ended only recently, thanks to Eri. Even with all his resources, Hisashi didn't manage to find out the hero responsible for the disaster until much, much later. The Hero Commission was rather thorough with their cover-up, and the reason for that became obvious when the Midoriyas finally discovered that the one responsible for it was Thunderbolt, the Commission's poster boy. Midoriya Inko is a slightly clumsy and overweight housewife which also happens to be the kindest and most emotional person that Izuku knows in his life. Her villainous past, that was composed entirely of bloodless thievery in which her object attraction quirk was rather useful, had ended a long time ago. But her deep, personal grudge towards Thunderbolt had not. Izuku's parents knew that he was preparing his villainous debut, and they wholeheartedly supported it, although his mom was constantly and extremely worried about him over it. He kept details under wraps for 2 reasons: to not worry his mom even more, and to surprise her. Thunderbolt visiting the USJ on her birthday was just the cherry on top. That man was a monster. Worse than Endeavor, somehow. Izuku hates the idea of taking the lives of others, but there are people that deserve to die. Like Thunderbolt. Or the original user of the quirk that Izuku used to end the number 3 hero's career. After his mom manages to stop drowning her only son in her tears, she quickly runs away to record the news. Some new photos to decorate the house with are also probably going to be involved. I must admit I am impressed. Hisashi Midoriya says when Inko vanishes from their sight. I expected you to start with some small work. But instead you attacked All Might and Thunderbolt in the middle of that infuriating rat stronghold. I am proud of you, Izuku. Receiving compliments from his father is something that just doesn't get repetitive. It might be something in his presence, some hard-to-pinpoint quality of character that puts strength and meaning behind his every action and word. That or some quirk. Izuku never figured it out. So, are you planning to return to the business? Izuku decides to not point out how attacking All Might wasn't part of the plan and how he actually could have killed the symbol of peace but didn't do it. It was a touchy subject to mention in his company, to say the least. Oh no, not at all. Hisashi Midoriya, known to some as All for One, the worst villain in the history of Japan, replies calmly. I've spent 6 years on life support, with next to no chances of recovery. It's something that changes your perspective on life. 2 centuries of undisputed lordship over the Japanese underworld is enough. The world of villains needs some new perspective to evolve. He doesn't have to add that his son was, and still is, his preferred successor. There was a reason why Izuku's father left him his money, contacts, and, although that one was mostly the genetics, quirk. Izuku's collection of quirks is pathetically small when compared to his father's, and he can only keep 2 active at once. But his father assured him that it would change. When Hisashi was his age, he could only keep a single quirk active. They chat for a short while about what to do next. Inko returns, and soon after it, the news anchor announces that the Hero Commission has decided to officially register the members of the League of Villains as villains, which, in other words, meant that there was now an open arrest warrant on them, if not a kill-on-sight order, depends on the person in question. Izuku had waited for this moment. What rank are they going to receive? It influences a lot of things. It is a bit of a badge of honor among the villains to get a high rank. If he wants to become the best villain, he needs to rise in the rankings. Inko and Hisashi waited for this moment to see his son's friends and coworkers. The rule about not bringing work home is an ironclad one. Izuku keeps his villain friends away, and Hisashi doesn't mention his investment company's newest business plans at the dinner table. Izuku still didn't quite get over the fact that his father's retirement plan consisted of taking over a company that he previously used to launder dirty money and make it into a successful company with absolutely no connections with the underworld. Although it is probably the only way to live in pretty much a small mansion without someone asking where all the money came from. Heroes and police are nosy people. Mine's crew is listed as a C-rank villain with an unknown mental quirk. Hitoshi is probably watching the news in their hideout, hiding the happiness behind his zombie face together with slight disappointment. Inko naturally asks Izuku to remind his friend to go to sleep earlier. Gentle and La Brava, Police or Nedzu made the connection, they took the Legion's bait well, are listed as C-ranks too. The news anchor mentions them as an independent villain duo with connections to a number of notable villain groups, including the Levelers. Their quirks are listed as unknown. Izuku also has to reassure his mom that La Brava wasn't underage, and while the age difference is quite serious, they are a completely legal pair. And are happily married. Gremlin is listed as B rank. Izuku is reassured that she didn't forget to put her mask on, they weren't quite ready to announce her face to the world. Her higher rank is probably due to someone figuring out that she was the League's support engineer. Supports, masterminds, healers, teleporters and so on are almost always higher ranked, simply because they are much less expendable than the combat types. Taking them out makes dismantling the group as a whole much easier. Izuku reassures his mom that no, Gremlin isn't his girlfriend. Not having to invite Mei over for tea at his home is one of the major benefits of keeping his villain life away from his family. His mom would probably die of a heart attack before Izuku would have time to explain to her what the pink-haired menace meant by having babies with her son. Kurogyri is listed as a possessor of a warp quirk and an A-rank villain. Reasonable enough in Izuku's opinion. Warp quirks are rare and extremely useful, and he did incapacitate both 13 and Snipe. This is actually mentioned in the program. Kurogyri is probably secretly smiling behind his bar, while wiping all the glasses for the 700th time this day. His smile has more to do with fatherly pride than with his own achievement. Mustard is a C rank with an unknown poison gas quirk. He is wearing that weird gas mask/armor that is supposedly inspired by some old anime, with a gas thrower that May built for him. Next is Vampire. B rank with unknown quirk, responsible for hospitalization of an underground hero. When his mom teases him with the "is she your girlfriend" bit, he blushes a bit too much. So she immediately demands that he invites her for dinner. Hisashi, the great trader, gives him the "don't fight when you can't win" face when he looks at him for support. Decay is declared a B rank, with an unknown quirk and specialization in close quarters combat. He is also mentioned as participating in the takedown of the underground hero. Izuku remembers describing the 5-finger point disintegration thing to erase her head, so the hero probably doesn't regain consciousness yet, or the heroes aren't sure if that wasn't a bluff. Mom is slightly worried by the hands and generally creepy aesthetic. Izuku reassures her that the hands aren't actual human hands. Getting Tenko to visit an underground therapist and overcome the trauma caused by what happened to his family was the best idea Izuku ever had. His mom would drop dead if her son's best friend was still wearing the severed and preserved hands of his family members that he accidentally killed as a child, as a part of his villain outfit. Hellhound is there too. A-rank villain, suspected to be either an animal with a quirk or someone using a bestial transformation quirk. Inko offhandedly comments that the beast's fur color resembles the one of their dog. Izuku and Hisashi manage to look surprised by her words. When she turns her face away, Hisashi gives his son a death glare. The dog is a second-gen Numu, one of those created after Izuku was introduced to the business, but before his father officially retired. The entire second gen was born when Izuku pointed out that if the Numu creation process, which he was incredibly uncomfortable with, damages higher brain function, then perhaps using creatures who generally aren't very dependent on said brain functions made more sense. Dr. Face-bombed at the idea. Or at least he tried to. He froze mid-move and made the "oh my all for one why I didn't think of this earlier" face. The result was an entire line of Numus built upon animals that developed quirks, and thus could be given more, but not sapience. Buying a dog with some minimal quirk on the internet was also significantly less problematic than kidnapping someone from the street. Izuku is still waiting for the right moment to inform the good doctor that he is only marginally less uncomfortable with the second-gen Numus and that it's probably the time to do something less maniacally evil. At least Eri in the meantime was followed by a dog who considered defending her and other family members his life's duty and could tank several all-might level punches after going into combat mode, which also makes it grow several times bigger. Mom doesn't know. Izuku and Hisashi decided that it was for the best. Finally, the climax of the show arrives. The news displays a small figure in an all-might hoodie, with a face-covering mask and an utility belt with a combat knife. Name: Legion. Quirk: unknown, extremely dangerous, touch-based. There was also a note mentioning Izuku's responsibility for Thunderbolt's demise. And a rank. Izuku almost chokes. He isn't a villain. He is a state-recognized supervillain. You fought and escaped All Might while wearing an All Might hoodie? Hisashi looks like Christmas came early. Mom seems to have broken under the revelation and is mumbling something that sounded like, "My boyasons rankofteris debutomi godium zo proud," while crying. He still has an hour until the karaoke and he really hopes he will survive until then. In the end, Izuku survives his mom's birthday party. Sure, it is a bit stressful. Mostly because Inko is torn between being terrified that something was going to happen to her baby now that he is a supervillain and being thoroughly happy and proud about him being a supervillain. Also, he really doesn't want Hisashi to start interrogating him about All Might's apparent public humiliation. There is no lying to Izuku's father. He always finds out. And without lying, Japan's newest supervillain would have failed to hide the fact that All Might survived because Izuku wanted him to. Which would have led to more troublesome discoveries, such as how Izuku secretly hopes to make All Might hug his sister with her quirk active simply to bring him back to his full strength because that would be super cool. Izuku is a villain, and he is reasonably comfortable with that designation. The word has a lot of meanings these days either way. But he has a strict code for what he was okay with in this business, and he genuinely thinks that heroes who genuinely do their best to save people, so All Might, Ingenium and pretty much every rescue and underground hero, are just the coolest thing ever. It kinda makes it easier to look at his own reflection in the mirror. But he will still fight them if necessary, and hopes that they won't corner him enough to force him to resort to lethal means. Besides, his dad makes a rather funny face each time he sees Izuku's collection of All Might's merch. He once walked into the kitchen in the morning to see his 2 kids wearing matching All Might's onesies, and his reaction was absolutely hilarious. He was visibly torn between cooing how his little girl looks cute and going out to crucify the family members of whoever designed the onesies. Izuku considers this a form of gauging the strength of his father's retirement conviction. He doesn't want his father to unretire himself. Japan really wouldn't survive that, especially with All Might being so weak right now. League wants Japan to survive, for now, and then there is also the part where All Might has all the moral qualities that Izuku would like his father to have. To make his son be less confused as to what to feel about him. Izuku is generally confused about a lot of things nowadays. Karaoke is reasonably interesting. Mustard is there too, they always call him Mustard, since he really dislikes being called with his real name, and besides, said name is a League secret, for some reason. After they briefly celebrate Izuku's supervillain status, they proceed to thoroughly humiliate him in public by making him sing songs. Although it is mostly him stuttering. The only saving grace for the League of Villains members is that they then humiliate themselves. And then Tenko announces that he wants to go to an arcade, to the surprise of absolutely no one, and they follow him. They spend a fairly pleasant time there. The highlight of the evening is probably Mustard going on a rant that Thunderbolt that died in the USJ was an imposter, and All Might is actually Endeavor and the real Thunderbolt wearing a costume, as they couldn't decide which one of them should be a #1 hero, so they decided to become one together. At this point, nobody in the League is willing to hazard a guess whether Mustard actually believes in his conspiracy theories. They just like to see him all worked out because of them pointing out the flaws in his logic. It all still feels surreal to Izuku. He did it. He is actually a villain, a supervillain. Up until this day he did, technically, violate a handful of laws on a daily basis, but he was still a criminal at best. And the government didn't even know about his existence. So it's as if he wasn't doing anything. But now he did it. Sure, there are 3 different levels of supervillains and he is on the lowest one, but it is still the S rank. Even if he dies tomorrow, he will still be remembered, in whatever will be left from Japan after his father's revenge rampage, that is. Hell, someone out there is probably already making his very own villain merch. Which is illegal, but honestly, also kinda cool. He wakes up from his thoughts only to see an unfamiliar girl's face very, very close to his. You were mumbling again. His brain snaps back in place. It is the face Himiko wears for the outing. He is thankful for the interruption. Mumbling about his status as a supervillain in public is a serious security risk. Arcade is a loud place, but not that loud. Thank you, Himi. She gives him one of her wide and only slightly creepy smiles. It is probably the fangs that added the creepy factor to it. So, I think we need to have a talk. I need to confirm some things. She looks at him with a mixture of questioning and encouragement on her face. She is always unfailingly encouraging. That's one of her biggest positive sides, and she has a number of those. So you, like me? She nods. But do you like me, or do you, like me? He is probably blushing furiously. Why on earth does he find it harder to talk about stuff like that than to plan an assault on 2nd or 3rd best guarded locations in Japan? I love you, silly. She makes some sort of salute. You are the cutest, most adorable thing I have ever seen in my life, and any girl that doesn't fall for you obviously has a horrible taste. Izuku isn't sure if being cute and adorable fits a criminal mastermind. He once asked his father what was the weirdest quirk in his collection, and it turned out to be one that made everyone around you perceive you as something cute and peatable. The results of his father using said quirk were just absolutely unholy and actually gave Izuku nightmares for a while. He eventually decides that he could probably work with the cute bit. It certainly would make him original among the supervillains. Alright, he braces himself for the big talk. So, does that mean that you are my, girlfriend? Their relationship was complicated from the start. Kurojirai introduced her to Izuku when he was 10 years old and on the best way to become a completely asocial recluse together with his best friend, Tenko. He was already training under his father to become his successor back then, at least when his father was actually conscious, since it was only a year since his last fight with All Might, and Hisashi apparently decided that having some social skills is a good idea for a villainous mastermind. Himiko stood up to the task. Izuku and Tenko were, frankly, pissed off at the obnoxious and loud girl that didn't even know how to play the simplest video game. But she didn't care about their grumbling and simply installed herself into their lives. Like a giant, mutated tick that refused to die no matter what you did, and that was a quote from one of Tenko's rants. Then they all got older. And Izuku noticed that the distance between him and Himiko, already abysmally small, started shortening rapidly. Hugs, cuddling, unexpected kisses on the cheek and so on started, and he was the only one recipient of all the additional affection. It was confusing. He still doesn't know how to react to that. His supervillain education didn't cover that. Yes? Himiko replies. It isn't an answer to his question. More like an announcement. She probably decided that he is now her boyfriend a few months ago and acted on it, completely ignoring the fact that he didn't, technically, agree to all of that. Sure, he kissed her back once. On an impulse. Tenko. Upon the two of them facing the opposite walls of the room, equally red and completely out of it. He later on bought Izuku a romance game and ranted on how three-dimensional girls aren't worth his player 2's time. Tenko is kinda nice. In his own weird ways. Himiko is nice too. In her own weird ways. That's it. Izuku is really out of his depth. Also, my parents want to meet you. That breaks her. Himiko Toga is moody. Or more like, emotionally complicated. She is a solid contender for the position of the world's most extrovert person, yes. She has absolutely no problems with suddenly and randomly kissing her crush, which is a nicer way of describing it than boyfriend unaware of that status, since it sounds kinda yandere. But she has absolutely no resistance to being on the receiving side of, well, pretty much everything relationship-related. The kissing incident is a good example. She was totally alright when she kissed him, but when he did the same thing to her, she reached the same level of shyness as he did. And not only started to stutter but also couldn't face him. Not to mention the blushing. There was a lot of blushing, made more visible by her pale skin. Izuku doesn't want to imagine Himiko Toga, who didn't have relatively sane villain friends during her childhood. She would probably end up being a psychopathic murderer or something. She would make a nice duo with Tenko in such a world. Izuku got his best friend a therapy for only one particular issue. Tenko had a lot of those. Your parents? She blushes furiously before making a step back and hiding behind her hands. Mine's crew is probably busy watching cat videos on the internet. Which is regretful, as Izuku can't use his quirk to restart Himiko. Hitoshi joined relatively recently, and the armored train of Himiko Toga's extrovertism is yet to overwhelm his resistance to spending time together outside of the base. Am I going to be the first one to meet them? She manages to calm herself enough to ask the question. He keeps his life separate from his villainous aspirations. The League is kept in the dark when it comes to Legion's family. Since most of the members have their own complicated backstories, they decided that he probably has a valid reason for secrecy and let it slide. There was only one exception. Izuku's family life is the second most popular field for Mustard's conspiracy theories. Well, technically speaking, Kurojirai babysat my sister once. The teleporter looks scary, but is extremely soft on the inside when children are involved. And Eri trusted her brother when he said that Kurogyari is a very nice person. Izuku still remembers returning home that day to see Kurogyari sitting on the floor in the dining room, practically covered in hero stickers. The warper seemed content with his life on that day. Other than that, no, you are going to be the fur. She doesn't let him finish. You have a sister? Himiko latches onto the subject with ferocity of, well, a vampire. A starving one. Yes, and I'm very sorry about that, but she is the cutest girl ever and you're not changing my mind. Izuku replies promptly. Also, you are going to agree with me once you meet her. Bakugo Katsuki is very easy to anger. He is impulsive, he refuses to back down from any sort of challenge, and has a long list of things that push him over the edge. He isn't constantly angry, the extras surrounding him know shit about him, but it is rather easy for him to go off. He wants to be a true combat-oriented hero. He needs to be strong. Anger brings strength. He isn't an idiot, though. Unless something really extreme happens, he can both be angry and think logically. Even if none of the students around him seemed to notice it. Tactics are useful. Beating villains in terms of strength is one thing, but beating them in the strength and brains department at once is even better. But that's where things stop making sense. He is supposed to be angry right now. Instead he feels confused. Is anger a circle? Can you get so angry that you get back to the start and no longer feel angry? Or is Bakugo too angry for his heart to keep up, so his brain suppresses the reaction until the anger declines to a manageable level? Bunch of shitty villains attacking UA wasn't a bad thing on its own. He considers villains to be stepping stones for himself. He needs a lot of those to become a #1 hero, so he can as well start early. And then he fucked up. Sure, he got a good hit on the Misty fucker, which was more than could be said about the extras that he was forced to study alongside of. But then he charged at the other villains. He has no idea why. Something in their leader just made him explode. And not only did he let villains almost kill their hobo teacher, which happened because he decided to risk his own life to save Bakugo, but he also discovered that Deku was alive. And a villain. Apparently a supervillain now. And then he didn't even bother fighting him for real. He had one of his own extras take him down, and then promptly ignored him. Before using what was obviously a fucking quirk to kill the fucking #3 hero. Bakugo Katsuki decides that he isn't raging around yet simply because his mind fails to process what happened. Deku exploding thunderbolt in front of him just broke him. His mind fails to compute the image. I see that you are awake. Bakugo flinches and looks around his hospital room. Something furry is sitting on the chair near his bed, with a small laptop in its hands. Paws. Yeah, those are paws. What the fuck are you? He has a bad day, and he really doesn't want to make it worse. Whoever that furry fuck is, it should just fuck off and let him figure things in peace. I'm Nedzu, the UA's principal. The rat/bear replies calmly. Something in its voice is pissing Bakugo off. Then he understands what he just heard, and that he just made his day way, way worse. He just referred to his school's principal as what rather than to. And it is Nedzu. Bakugo's idol is All Might, but he lives close enough to UA to hear the legends of Nedzu's viciousness and his absolute lack of tolerance towards certain things. Such as people treating him as not a person. I suspect that I know what you are thinking about it, Bakugo Katsuki. Nedzu's voice is calm, but something in it makes the student tremble internally. I'm going to let it slip. You are young after all. And I know full well that you have a tendency to speak before thinking. If anyone else has told him that, he would explode. But this time, it isn't even on the table. You know who Legion is? Nedzu announces. He called you Kaken and you raged, and called him a quirkless Deku. You will describe your relationship with this villain immediately. If I catch you lying or omitting the truth, you'll be expelled. And I will personally make sure that you will never be enrolled in any hero school in this country. Bakugo Katsuki heard that Nedzu is normally a perfectly sane and decent individual. Unless he switched into his little genocide mode. Unless Deku greatly overestimated the sanity and decency part in one of his hero rants that somehow stuck to Bakugo's memory, the student is just witnessing said mode. Bakugo confesses. It's as if a dam breaks, letting words flow through. Crushing the lives of hundreds. The day of the attack on the USJ was one of the worst in Nedzu's life. He was caught completely off guard by a group composed mostly of children. It was a humiliation, yes. But he could live through that. He likes challenges, and cracking down the League of Villains appeared to be one. The real problem is that it is a distraction. And he doesn't need those. The situation in Japan is precarious. Way too many powerful groups. Increasingly autocratic and inept, it always goes together, government. Hero Public Safety Commission installing itself as a shadowy power behind the ailing democracy. Hokkaido practically seceding after a narrowly thwarted coup by the Meta Liberation Army, and it's not like they managed to get the true supporters of the coup, only the mob and some turncoat heroes that almost overthrew the government with their numbers. Quirkless Liberation Front, Creature Rejection Clan, Inhuman Supremacy Party, Levelers and a dozen more villain groups rampaging around. The symbol of peace was never more important. He is a giant casting its shadow over Japan. Redestro would have long ago started an open war if he wasn't afraid of All Might sending him flying from Hokkaido to Russia with a punch. All Might was the symbol of what heroism should be about, someone to look up to remind other heroes what they are supposed to be. And now, a group of brilliant young people almost overwhelmed him. If he died, no, if he was even wounded, Nedzu doesn't even want to imagine the chaos that would ensue. The country would collapse overnight. In a better world, most if not all of the League members would have made for fantastic heroes. Most of them didn't even display their quirks, yet they managed to take down several pro-heroes, kill Thunderbolt and corner All Might. Nedzu has to admit that it is simply breathtaking. But now, they are a wild card. Nedzu isn't even sure if they are UA's enemies, if he is to be honest. He considered eliminating Thunderbolt himself. UA is his fortress, and he dislikes nosy people. Instead, a completely unknown group did that for him, while making the world think that they came to kill All Might, the most powerful of Nedzu's chess pieces. All that the Rat Bear has to do now was to pretend to be saddened by Thunderbolt's demise. But the League's astounding debut is going to complicate the chessboard even further. All of that because a completely unrelated school messed up. Nedzu is going to completely annihilate it, simply out of spite. And to improve his mood a bit. He does things for such reasons from time to time. If said school was slightly less quirkist, perhaps Nedzu would be spending this day with Midoriya Izuku, preparing him to be his successor. He certainly has the brains for that. The tactical acumen and quirk analysis skills displayed by him during the attack make the Rat Bear salivate. Using Kurogiri to take down both 13 and Snipe by turning their quirks against them. Forcing Eraserhead to deal with two talented melee experts, with one constantly trying to blindside him, taking full advantage of the weaknesses of the Erasure quirk. Mustered on standby to gas Eraserhead if Decay and Vampire failed to take him down, while simultaneously suppressing his quirk by limiting visibility. Preparing the distractions to keep All Might away. Actually figuring out All Might's weakness. According to Bakugu, Midoriya started to analyze quirks right after learning how to write. How good does he have to be today? He would gladly exchange Bakugu for Midoriya. Alas, water under the bridge. Now he has to eliminate Legion and his League before they will grow even more dangerous. And Bakugu Katsuki might be a useful pawn in this endeavor. 2 months of detention. Nedzu announces when Bakugu finishes his hurried confession. Mandatory anger management classes and psychological consultations. Consider yourself on probation. If I hear anything even remotely discriminatory from you before you graduate, you'll be expelled. The same will happen if your temper issues endanger another student or a member of the faculty. If Nedzu is to be honest, Bakugu is as much of a victim as Midoriya. Sure, he was the bully. That much couldn't be denied. But nobody has ever told him that what he was doing was wrong. There is no genuine malice in this child, only acute insecurities and wrongly understood kindness. If Nedzu read him well, he started attacking Midoriya as a form of discouraging his friend from going after heroics, which he perceived as too dangerous for a quirkless boy. Add peer pressure and irresponsible adults to the mix, and you get Japan's youngest supervillain. And an aspiring hero that was yet to understand that his dream of becoming a #1 hero is dead and buried. Legion is going to be eventually unmasked. Someone will make a connection. Driving a child into becoming a menace to society through bullying is enough to stain his image forever. The best that Bakugo can hope for was becoming another endeavor, so close yet so far from the top. He leaves the hospital room, leaving the shattered remnants of the student behind. Nezuko hopes that Izuku is a late bloomer. There are cases of supposedly quirkless people developing powerful quirks much later than normal. Eclipse of the Quirkless Liberation Front is a good example. She was 17 years old when her quirk kicked in. The alternative to that is too horrible to comprehend. 3 days after the USJ raid, the villain network finally catches up with the events. Legion's account is promoted from an unranked passerby to an S-rank villain. The same thing happens to other members of the League. Villain Network is pretty much something between a Discord and Facebook, but for villains on the international scale. Izuku's father didn't elaborate on how it works and how it avoided international scrutiny, but he did claim it was reasonably secure. On the other hand, you never know if the villain you are talking with isn't an undercover hero with an expertly falsified criminal record. Caution was advised. Theoretically, anyone can join it. But you don't get access to anything interesting unless your country declares you a villain and mysterious administrators of the network confirm your credentials. It is underwhelming, at least a bit. Izuku expected something more. On the other hand, most of the villains aren't exactly the friendliest sort. If anything, League of Villains was probably an exception to the rule, since its members got along quite nicely. He will probably end up using it to chat with other League members. Some of them didn't live in the Legion's secret lair, oddly enough. And even those that did seem to be very into the internet, especially in the evening. Plus, probably he would ask some villains for an autograph through it. Delivering it will be a pain. He creates a private chat and invites League members to it. Tenko joins in immediately, unsurprisingly. Hitoshi is right after him. His friends would benefit from having life aside from the internet. He hears a faint knock on the door of his study. Come in. Tenko is playing downstairs, so the chances of it being a hero are rather abysmal. He would have heard screams, curses, and general combat noise. And probably had the entire building collapse due to Tenko decaying walls. It is Himiko. In her shy and super awkward mode. Zuku? In a very shy mode and super awkward mode, he corrects himself. So, I've been wondering, what should I wear to the meeting? Seeing Himiko actually conscious about what she is wearing is a new experience. She attacked Yue while wearing a villain outfit mostly composed of what is pretty much a school uniform, just with some added knives. He isn't even sure where she took that school uniform from, if he is to be honest. And he isn't sure if he wants to know. It really doesn't matter. Izuku replies. Wear whatever you are comfortable with. Your standard clothes are totally alright. He kinda likes them. Especially the short skirt. But he would rather go to the Tartarus than admit it publicly. Oh, she isn't sure what to answer, most likely. And, the face? She adds while covering hers with her hands. There has been a serious misunderstanding between them. Izuku understands. He stands up from the chair and approaches her, leaving the computer behind. He gently pulls her hands off her face. She responds with some stammering while doing her best to not look at him. Himiko Toga. The official tone makes her finally look at him, but it is clear that she was struggling. My parents are villains. They are absolutely proud of me for staging the raid on the USJ. The reason why they want to meet you is because they figured everything out from my reaction to Mom's teasing me about you being my girlfriend when the news announced your new status as a villain. They know who you are, they know what you are doing for a living, and they have absolutely no problem with that. She is just staring at him, so he decides to add something more. Just be yourself, alright? The resulting hug almost finishes Legion's career as a villain. It also makes him forget to explain just what sort of villains his parents are. It can wait, right? Kurogyri opens a warp gate in front of Izuku's home soon after the sunset. Oh. Himiko looks around with a surprise written on her face. Izuku can understand that. His home is a small residence, surrounded by a well-trimmed garden, in the middle of the forest. Sure, there is a road. Someone might have asked awkward questions if they weren't any. Warp quirks are rare after all, but other than that, it is just the forest. Izuku prefers to not mention just how rich his family is in front of the League members. Most of them were either impoverished before turning to villainy, or worse than that. Himiko's parents were relatively well off, but since her quirk was villainous, her childhood was tough. Father has an investment company, Izuku says in an almost apologetic tone. He doesn't mention that he also invests a lot of money in the League. It's from his personal retirement funds, though. Company itself is clean. Oh yeah, you said he was a villain? Himiko is back to her normal self. Izuku chuckles. Retired villain? He replies. He uses the company as an explanation for the money. Actually, I forgot to mention something. He admonishes himself for that fiercely. What is it, Zuku? My parents are retired supervillains. She stares at him in surprise. I forgot the super bit when I told you about them. My bad. Do I know them? She is visibly excited. Sure, she didn't reach the level of fanboyism present in Izuku, but unless you are Tenko Shimura you simply can't spend childhood with Midoriya Izuku without catching some of it. Mom used to be known as Mischief? Himiko's eyes widen in shock. That famous thief? Izuku nods. He remembers Mom crying when Mr. Compress got interviewed by someone and mentioned her as an inspiration alongside the peerless thief, Aji Haruma. Then again, he remembers Mom crying about a lot of things. And an S rank in her prime. Izuku replies with pride. At least one supervillain on his family tree that he can be genuinely and unquestionably proud of. Now she's very dedicated to being a housewife and a mother. Very emotional. Don't get startled when she starts crying, she does that a lot. I see. She makes a thoughtful expression for a moment. Quite unlike her, if Izuku is to be honest. Not that she is stupid, quite the opposite in fact. But she tended to be way too expressive to make such reserved faces. And your dad? Now things are going to get tricky. Do you remember All Might's time limit thing? She nods. It's because the last time they met, my dad tore All Might's stomach and lung out. Himiko.exe stops working. But father ended up spending 6 years on life support after it, and while he made a full recovery he decided that it's time to retire and focus on his family. Izuku continues. All Might thinks that his nemesis is dead, and the government never admitted that he exists as they prefer the public to think that the symbol of peace is untouchable. So he is something like an class villain? So reality is crazier than the mustard's conspiracy theories. Himiko finally manages to respond. Wow. He looks at her with an apologetic smile. Yeah, it kinda is. He adds. Also before we enter, I need to quickly run you through a list of several crucial rules. Rules? Rule number 1. My sister is the cutest being under the sun, and is too pure to be exposed to something as unsightly as villainy. When she is with us, we do not talk about villainous things. Izuku announces with a serious expression. Okay. Himiko is back to her cheerful self. What next? Rule number 2. If you notice something wrong with our dog, do not speak of it aloud. Mom and my sister do not know, and it should stay like that. This time Himiko stares at him strangely. Something wrong? Like what? She appears to be a bit distraught by that rule. He shrugs. She'll know when she'll know. Otherwise, there is no point in mentioning it. Izuku isn't sure if he wants her to know. Not important. Rule number 3 is that we do not talk about All Might when Dad is around. He got United States of Smashed at least twice, and considers All Might to be his arch-nemesis. He is kind enough to ignore his merch, as he knows that I'd set fire to his suit collection if he destroyed it, but that's as far as he goes. Noted. What else, Zuku? She adds. She seems entertained by all of it and he has no idea why. What happens in this residence stays in this residence. He knows that she can hold a secret well when she wants to, but he still decided to mention it. Something less obvious? She replies with a chuckle. The entrance door is slightly open. Izuku pushes it open a bit more. No light. Now that is suspicious. He can't imagine someone crazy enough to attack All for One in his home. Only All Might has a chance of winning that fight single-handedly, but if it was him, there would be no home left. Several top 10 heroes with a plan or several supervillains would have a chance too, but Redestro, Eclipse and Mr. Compress cooperating to take down All for One is about as likely as All Might and All for One working together for world peace. And without those three, all you have left were some minor supervillains. Maybe save for Purity and Beast, but those are assholes that nobody liked. Then again, he can also scarcely imagine top 10 heroes mobilizing without infighting. Nedzu and the Hero Public Safety Commission are at each other's throats for years. Nedzu didn't start a civil war yet because he didn't want Redestro to jump at the victor's throat. The same goes for the HPSC. Night vision. Reflex boost. He can see clearly now, without switching on the lights. Himiko is following him soundlessly, and with a knife. He did tell her to be herself during the meeting, but he still didn't expect her to take her knives. Midoriya Izuku is sometimes a bit of a dummy. They search the house until finally Izuku notices something odd. Swivel chair in the middle of the room. Massive swivel chair in the middle of the room. Light is suddenly switched on, and Izuku is blinded for a second before he deactivates night vision. As a result, he misses most of the grand reveal. When his eyesight comes back, All for One is already facing them, sitting on the chair in one of his best suits with a white cat on his lap. "Welcome to my evil lair, young villains," Hisashi Midoriya announces in his best villain voice. It's absolutely terrifying, even to Izuku who has known him for years. Himiko jumps back on instinct. Izuku isn't surprised. His father is intimidating even when he isn't doing anything actively malicious. Himiko's instincts are well honed. He is sure that she would immediately recognize Hisashi as a mortal danger even without Izuku's warnings about who the man is. Swivel chair reveal, really? Izuku curses himself for having the idea to bond with his slightly estranged father over old movies. Why exactly did All for One liked Bond films so much is anyone's guess, really. Did he relate to the villains in it? I always wanted to try it. His dad shrugs while letting the cat jump off him. I even borrowed a cat from Kurogyri. You're the worst. Izuku replies. Stop complimenting me, Izuku. It is a bit of an inside joke to them. I think it's time for some introductions. Also, you can put down your knife, vampire. Izuku's friends are safe in this house. Unless, he is probably trying to make an SSS rank villain equivalent of, don't you dare make a mess in my home, but accidentally. Ends up ramping up the intimidation factor. Himiko freezes. Midoriya Inko might have gotten a bit chubby after she retired, but she can still move quietly. Quietly enough to sneak upon All for One himself and suddenly slap his head with a rolled newspaper. What the? He tries to ask but is interrupted. Midoriya Hisashi. All for One freezes. He recognizes the tone. Jokes are over. Can't you see how terrified she is of you? Your son finally brought home a friend, and you are about to give them a heart attack with your antics. Have you no shame? In Izuku's opinion, All for One got interested in his mom simply because she was probably the only person out there that didn't cower in terror in front of him. That or her cooking. Either one works. Unlike him, she actually has an idea how normal people work on a day-to-day basis, too. He was learning things from her, but he was still a bit off. There is a reason why he governed his company through video conferences from home. He isn't ready to be unleashed upon the non-villainous world. All right, I apologize. Izuku's father announces. That was uncalled for. I'm sorry for scaring you. His intimidating aura lessens significantly. Inko gets to Himiko, takes the knife out of her hand and then gently hugs her and pats her back. Izuku joins her from the other side. It's all right, sweetie, Inko says in her most reassuring tone. Himiko Toga suddenly remembers that breathing is a thing. Izuku has to admit that Himiko's visit could start in a better way. Even after Inko consoles her a bit, she is still rather shaken. He isn't surprised. It worries him a lot. He actually likes her, in the likes way, or at least he thinks so, and he doesn't want his father to influence their relationship in any way. For example, by scaring Himiko mentally for life. Eri shows up a few minutes later. In her all-might onesie, she is probably planning to go to sleep soon, so it was a given. All for One smiles widely, but Izuku can see the existential pain in his eyes. Judging from the expression on Himiko's face, she just decided that Izuku was correct when he said that his sister is the cutest thing ever. Himiko likes cute things. And people. Hello. Eri says, her big eyes set on Himiko. Oh hi. Himiko's smile is genuine, although slightly exhausted. You must be Izuku's sister. And you are Izuniken's wife. Eri announces with a straight face slightly tinted with a "I'm so smart" expression. Himiko breaks again. This time together with Izuku. Inko makes a sound like she just choked on something. Hisashi is the only person to remain sane, and is probably having a blast while doing so. It's just that he doesn't show it. Eri. The girl looks up at her adopted father. They are friends. While I admit there is a possibility of marriage further down the line, they are way too young for that. The mention of this possibility of marriage only messes everyone up more. It was intentional. Truly, All for One's evil is limitless. They are eating a late dinner together, talking about some random things. Eri is around, so they couldn't have the proper talk. The food is, of course, delicious. At some point of the meal, All for One's restraint reaches its limit. I have a question for you, he says towards Himiko. You know that Izuku likes analyzing quirks. I happen to be a bit of a quirk analyst myself. An understatement of a century in Izuku's opinion. Both sentences, in fact. And I'm extremely curious about your quirk. If it isn't a problem, could you tell me what it is? He is probably curious about quirks of the entire League of Villains. So many new yet powerful villains with unknown quirks. He spent 2 centuries gathering hundreds of interesting quirks inside his own body, and certain things stuck, even if he promised Izuku to not steal more of them after retiring. Himiko responds by transforming into Izuku. Her clothes stay the same. Seeing himself wearing girls' clothes in front of his parents, no less, is a bit weird. Full physical transformation. All for One is suitably impressed. And an almost instant one. A wonderful quirk. I assume there are some requirements for the transformation, yes. Yes. Himiko replies while changing back to her natural self. But I'm not sure if I can speak about it here. She is considerate enough to not mention the blood-drinking part in front of Eri. Or Izuku's parents. Eri suddenly raises her hand. Is it about sex? She asks with an absolutely innocent face. Izuku chokes on his katsudon. Himiko freezes. Inko looks at her adopted daughter with terror on her face. Hisashi's face is one of a traumatized soldier after years of trench warfare who was just told that the war started again and it's time for the trenches again. Where did you hear that word? Inko manages to utter. Izuku can see the dam is ready to burst. You and Daddy were talking about Izuniken yesterday? Eri announces, completely unaware of what is happening. Dad asked you if it was the time to have a talk about sex with Izuniken, and if it wasn't already too late for that. Excuse me for a moment. Hisashi stands from the table and disappears into another room. They can all hear a muffled scream coming from it a few seconds later. Mom starts crying while trying to explain to Eri that this is something that she was too young to know details about. Eri finally decides to go to sleep. It happens right after a large dog of undetermined breed walks into the room as if it owned it. The dog is limping a bit. What happened to it? Himiko asks. She does like animals, although only some of them. Either the cute, so most cats, or the fluffy, so large dogs. This one is hard to classify concerning its breed, but there is certainly a lot of fluff. We don't know, actually. Inko replies with a worried look on her face. Hisashi took him to a vet, and there are no actual wounds, but he still walks like this. It's the second day of it, but I think it's getting better. She and her husband vanish from the room, probably to help Eri settle down, and probably for some bedtime story. It is at this point that Himiko connects the dots and turns her face towards Izuku. You didn't? She looks shocked. I did. Izuku replies sheepishly. I panicked. So I told Kurojari to warp in my dog. It has a really nasty quirk. A few, in fact. But he is yet to explain the whole Numu business to the League. They knew he had something prepared, together with the mysterious doctor, in case things went wrong, and he did get a few questions about the Hold's bioengineered superweapons thing after the attack. That talk had to happen sooner or later. Preferably later. You had your dog fight All Might, the #1 hero, she says, still obviously in shock. And your dog almost won. Don't rub salt into my wounds, please. And she is yet to see his room. That's when things are going to get awkward. That's a lot of All Might. Himiko says after entering his room and taking a look at all the merchandise scattered throughout it. Well, he is my idol. Kind of. Izuku replies. He does his best to not think about the fact that there was now a girl in his room. Talking about All Might feels significantly less awkward. He is reasonably confident on that subject. Unlike the other one. It isn't just All Might, though. He has some Edge Shot, Miruko, Gang Orca and Best Genius stuff too. And a handful of smaller things themed after underground heroes that are mostly handmade, including a large eraser head figurine. Plus some rescue hero things. At least 70% of things in his bedroom are All Might themed, though. He is a villain, and another villain just saw his room, full of hero merch. It is the right time to explain some things. The last thing he wants is Himiko misunderstanding what she just saw. Then again, can it really be misunderstood? I am a villain and I know it, Izuku says in a serious tone. Himiko manages to pry her eyes off the merch scattered throughout the room and looks at him. But I simply cannot find it in myself to hate people who are actually willing to risk their lives for others. It's one thing that I really disagree on with my father. They talked about it a lot. Eventually Hisashi gave up on trying to persuade Izuku. He accepted that his son had a different definition of villainy and they both agreed to disagree on it. For as long as Izuku didn't apply to a hero school or didn't go vigilante, that is. So while they are horrible people among the heroes like Thunderbolt, people that I'm willing to end, I just can't hate the idea behind it all. I guess that it does make me a bad villain, but... She grabs his hands and moves closer to him. That's what makes you an awesome villain, Zuko. Himiko says quietly. You know what my past was like. I had a villainous quirk, so I was told to keep it hidden from the world, even despite it hurting me. Everyone kept telling me that I was a villain in the making, despite the fact that I didn't want to be one. She pauses for a second, as if gathering courage. Villains were scary. Then I met you. The kindest person I ever knew and an aspiring villain. Person who showed me how to be myself without growing to hate what I was. Izuku is on the verge of crying. Strangely enough, he isn't the only one. That's what brought the league together. Himiko continues. We all didn't fit. We all wanted to change something. To do something. But we had no idea what or how. And then, instead of going insane or on a random murder spree, we met you. Person who didn't judge us by our past or by our quirks. Person with ideals that we could follow. A leader. So don't feel bad for having said ideals. Besides, she chuckles slightly. After seeing All Might in person, I must admit he is awesome. Your dog's more awesome though. What follows is a session of laughter interspersed with crying. And that's where I work on my secret evil plans. Izuku announces, while Himiko eyes the room curiously. It is quite spacious. There is a desk with a computer and a large book stand filled with his hero and villain analysis notes on one end. On the other end are 2 bookshelves with a rather diverse content. Oh wow. Himiko is shocked. That's the biggest collection of villain merch I ever saw. Having it in the room next to my own is kinda ironic. Izuku sighs. And most of the stuff are figurines I made myself. Actual villain merch is illegal and thus tends to be of inferior quality. I refuse to settle on inferior quality. He has standards, after all. There are like 200 figurines there. Himiko looks at him with a combination of terror and surprise. She is almost correct. There are only 191 figurines in the room. You made them all yourself? I'm a bit of a fanboy, not sure if you noticed. He replies and she laughs. The left bookshelf is the villains I personally disagree and dislike. Izuku decides to explain. Plus heroes I believe are pretty much villains in disguise. They can both see a Thunderbolt figurine on that bookshelf. On the right are the ones that I personally look up to or at least think that they had a point. No All for One's figurines. Izuku respects him as a father figure. He is genuinely doing his best, even if a lot of law-abiding citizens would disagree. But his villain history is questionable. Extremely. You don't get called symbol of evil without being a monster. Lack of his figurine means that Izuku doesn't have to ask himself which bookshelf it belongs to. He himself isn't sure why. He knows he should hate his father's handiwork, but somehow he just can't, and at least not when he regularly sees the man in question go mellow when Eri pops up in the room. This bothers him at night sometimes. Wait, is that? Himiko notices it, of course. Meta Liberation War? On the right bookshelf? She didn't expect a rather quirkist book in the house of a person who used to be bullied for quirklessness. There is also the part with the gremlins past that they both prefer to not touch. It is. Izuku replies with pride. Don't look at me like that, Hime. I dislike the ideology, and I am going to fight Redestro eventually. And you know why? Destro was much better. He fought for free quirk usage in the times when quirked people were discriminated against. If someone made him time travel to the modern day and showed him his descendant openly discriminating against the quirkless and those with weak quirks, Izuku shrugs. I don't think he would be very happy about it. I should probably stop asking you questions. Himiko sighs. If I keep doing that, you'll give me a 10-hour-long lecture and it's a bit too late for that. He blushes a bit. Sure, it is his favorite subject, but he wouldn't make it a lecture. Okay, maybe a short one. Now show me your browsing history. She leaps towards his computer. New. Izuku panics. Thankfully it is a joke. Unfortunately, he fell for it, and when he catches up to her, he sees that she is laughing. So you Dio have some shameful bits in it. She laughs. I thought you were an innocent cookie, but now I can see there is some spice in it. He does his best to appear innocent. Who is that though? She decides to not mention the part of his desk occupied by figurines of the League of Villains members, but she does get curious over the one figurine on the desk that she doesn't recognize. Which is probably suspicious, as it is right next to the monitor. In a rather exposed location. Thunderbolt was the second person that I killed. Certainly not something that a 16-year-old teenager should be saying. But he is living in cruel times. This is the first one. He was a villain who had a vision of a better world, but did horrible things to achieve it. I keep it here so that I remember him, and I remember that ends do not justify all means. That bird mask is quite cool. Himiko comments. What did he do? Kept Eri in a locked cell deep underground and harvested her blood to use her quirk to produce anti-quirk bullets. For more than a year. She stares at him with an abject horror on her face. He wanted a world of equality, and he saw quirks as something that made true equality impossible. And a form of disease. I still feel guilty for killing him, but I do not regret it. There is silence in the room for a while. Finally Himiko speaks. I love you. But I'm going to stab you dead if you ever do something like that. Himiko, in general, had no problems with stabbing people. Even stabbing them to death. But there were lines she clearly wasn't going to cross. That's great. Izuku replies with a smile. If he ever goes so far off, slaying him will be an act of heroism. The type he likes. It is probably for the best that he doesn't mention that she bled her dry and then put her back together with his quirks part. Nor the one where he disassembled her into a blood smear and then reassembled her back as a form of punishment. Multiple times. It greatly helped the no. Regrets bit after he saw him slowly disassemble into a pool of blood in front of him, screaming curses and begging for life alternately. Overhaul died slowly. And he knew why. Fuck school. So how did your date go? Insomniac. You just want something to build another conspiracy theory about his family. Fuck school. Izuku checks their private group chat on the Villain Network first thing in the morning. Okay, first thing in the morning after Kurogyri warps Himiko out, she spent the night in the guest room. Everyone he invited joined it, and Izuku is already starting to regret it. Small Might. Honesty is a virtue. Handyman. We are villains though. Small Might. Do you know how many supervillains failed because their followers lied to them? Small Might. I am too young to fail so. Small Might. Honesty good. Small Might. Unless you are talking to the police or heroes. Insomniac. Great that you added the last part. Insomniac. I was about to phone local hero office to tell them about the league. Friendly vampire princess. It was great. Oh no, Izuku thinks. Friendly vampire princess. His parents are pretty cool. Friendly vampire princess. And his little sister is the cutest thing I ever saw. Friendly vampire princess. He also has a dog. Friendly vampire princess. Izuku's dog would probably chew All Might if someone told him to. She isn't going to let that go, Izuku decides. Fuck school. Any of his parents looked like aliens. Friendly vampire princess. Friendly vampire princess. One of the students in the USJ had a pink skin. Friendly vampire princess, and antenna-like horns. Friendly vampire princess. Compared to her, Small Might's parents looked pretty human. Fuck school. Disguises. Pendulum. Insomniac. What? Handyman. It's so normal that it's weird. Tenko has a point, Izuku decided. Point that needs to be addressed. Immediately if possible. Small Might at Friendly Vampire Princess forgot to mention that both of my parents are supervillains. Fuck school. Insomniac. Surprised face. Handyman. Small Might. Can't tell any details. Small Might. Both are thought to be dead. Small Might. We have a deal. Small Might. I don't tell anyone who they are unless they specifically agree to it, and I keep my house's location secret. Small Might. In exchange they don't butt into my business and support the league with some modest donations every month. Small Might. So unless you decide to become my girlfriends, you can forget about finding out. Handyman. Not interested enough. Insomniac. Carrot. Fuck school. Can you at least play 20 questions with me? Miss Explosion. I'm in if they let me make babies for them. Friendly Vampire Princess. I'm okay with that if I'm the wife and you're the mistress. 3. Izuku sighs. Loudly. Small Might. Small Might. Just no. Small Might. I'm going to wake up as a cyborg after the first night. Small Might at Insomniac, at Handyman and at Friendly Vampire Princess are my heroes for being brave enough to sleep in the same building as at Miss Explosion. Small Might, strengthening my image as a criminal mastermind by having a harem of deadly women isn't worth it. Insomniac, she isn't that bad. Everybody loves the bartender. A week ago I ran into Miss Explosion in front of your bedroom. Everybody loves the bartender. At night. With a welding torch and a number of parts. Everybody loves the bartender. She refused to elaborate on why she was there. Everybody loves the bartender. I teleported her back to her room. 3 times. Insomniac. Oh shit, she is that bad. Small Might changed everybody loves the bartender's nickname to Papagiri. Papagiri, please no. Friendly Vampire Princess. Please yes. Small Might. Technically more for an uncle to me, but certainly dad to half of the league. Small Might, and certain cat. Small Might, you know what I mean. Small Might, my revenge will be terrible. Insomniac, did someone say cat? Fuck school, now I need details. Papagiri, his father wanted to do a swivel chair reveal inspired by an old film series they watched together. Papagiri, having a cat on your lap is apparently part of it. Papagiri, I provided the cat. Papagiri changed their nickname to Cat Provider. Small Might changed Cat Provider's nickname to Papagiri. Papagiri, excuse me for a moment. Papagiri, I found a stash of All Might merch in the headquarters and I need to do something with that. Papagiri, on an unrelated note, does someone know how to find GPS coordinates of the nearest active volcano? Small Might changed Papagiri's nickname to Cat Provider. Friendly Vampire Princess. Fuck school. Insomniac. It's great to know that our great leader is impervious to blackmail. Insomniac. Also. Insomniac. Can I move to at Small Might house? Small Might. If you want my mom to sneak sleeping pills into your drink at 8 p.m. then we can think about it. Small Might. The first thing she did after seeing your face on the TV was asking me to tell you to go to bed earlier. Insomniac. Damn it. Small Might. Also you aren't Insomniac, you just watch cats and troll people on the internet until 4 a.m. Insomniac. Because I can't sleep. Small Might. Did you even try? Insomniac. Once, it was unpleasant. Handyman. Okay, so a question. Handyman. We had a great first fight, lots of experience and fame plus 500. Handyman. GG would play again. Handyman. But what now? That is a good question. Way too good. Actually, Izuku was trying to not think about it too much for the past 3 days, since he was busy sorting out his family situation. And dealing with Himiko's relationship status upgrade. Small Might, hard to say TBH. Small Might, I focused on the USJ attack, so I only have a general idea of what to do next. Small Might, we got our name out, and that's great. Small Might, but we set the bar a bit too high, I think. Small Might, if we start robbing banks after assassinating number 3 hero, it would look kinda weird. Insomniac, suffering from success. Insomniac, nice change from suffering from failures XD. Friendly Vampire Princess. Mood. Miss Explosion, can we blow up local Detonarat factory? Miss Explosion, I have just the right baby for that. Cat Provider, you are storing high-yield explosives next to my bar? Miss Explosion, yes. Cat Provider, you just lost your internet privilege. Miss Explosion, no. Cat Provider, also I am confiscating the explosives. Miss Explosion, you won't take my baby from me. Small Might, do it. Small Might at Insomniac, go to her workshop and brainwash her before she does something crazy. Insomniac, BRB. Friendly Vampire Princess, now that this is sorted out, at Small Might talk with us about the plans. Friendly Vampire Princess, wait, what was that explosion? Small Might, what explosion? Handyman, she is trolling you. Insomniac, that's my job. Insomniac, also at Miss Explosion has been detained. Insomniac, she said where the bomb is. Insomniac, everything will be alright. Small Might, I hope you aren't trolling me while saying that because I know you well enough. Small Might, dying in flames is a small price to pay for a good joke in your twisted mind. Insomniac, on an unrelated note, does someone know a good expert at disarming bombs who can reach our headquarters within 20 minutes? In moments like these, Izuku remembers that he is leading a villain organization that is mostly composed of teenagers. And Tenko, who is a child at heart. They have skills and a certain form of suicidal bravery that only teenagers and young adults are capable of, but maturity is a completely different and alien thing. Small Might, damn it. Small Might, Papagiri, I call upon thee. Small Might, status report. Cat Provider, situation has been dealt with. Cat Provider, Insomniac is making fun of you. Insomniac, Traitor Gyri. Small Might, also about the plan. Small Might, we are going to lay low for a while. Small Might, making another move right after is kinda suicidal. Small Might, Nedzu is after. Small Might, we made sure to leave no traces. Small Might, but he is crazy good. Small Might, and on high alert. Small Might, so you can focus on your school at UA Spy. UA Spy, reassuring. UA Spy, but you are right. Nedzu is strengthening security. He still thinks that you got the school plan from La Brava. If you move against UA again soon, he will get suspicious. UA Spy, wait until Power Loader stops being this attentive to the cybersecurity before doing anything to UA. Small Might, well, you heard it. Small Might, the thing is, my plans aren't exactly focused on UA. Small Might, I don't plan to invade it again, that's for sure. Small Might, I actually kinda love that school. It was all about the Thunderbolt. The Spy, great. So what's the point of me being in it? Small Might, high-quality education and good work prospects with the diploma? UA Spy. Fuck school. Straight face. Fuck school. I hate UA. Friendly Vampire Princess. We know. Handyman. Yet. Insomniac. Yup, you mention that twice a week at least. Mustard has a general dislike for any schools perceived as elite, and personal hatred for the UA. Which is also the reason for his slip into villainy. Izuku knows about it, and considers it a bit childish, but then again he became a villain because his parents were villains. He isn't one to judge. If Mustard saw that as enough of a reason to become a villain, then Izuku is alright with that. It wasn't his job to talk people out of villainy, but it was his job to make them into proper villains. Ones with skills, and goal, conviction and some personal creed to follow. Small Might, also I want you to keep an eye on the rat. And the kids. I think I see a few that could be potentially recruited in correct circumstances. Small Might, oh, and telling me how their curriculum works is on the list too. Small Might, it might be helpful in league training. UA Spy, okay fine. UA Spy, before I forget. UA Spy, Blueberry mentioned that the Quirkless Liberation Front is planning something big. Small might, define big. UA spy, no clue. UA spy, Blueberry isn't high enough in the ranks to know the details. UA spy, but it's something really big. UA spy, maybe not coup d'etat big but big. And public. UA spy, Eclipse herself will probably show up. UA spy, going to happen within 2 months. UA spy, I might be able to warn you within a day or two prior to the event, but details and location are unlikely. UA spy, GTG, homeroom starts. Small might, he will remember. Small might, okay, so back to the main subject. Handyman, finally. Small might, we need to make a proper statement to the world. Small might, because right now the media made us sound like we tried to murder a bunch of children and all might. Small might, I'm literally too afraid to recruit people RN because we'd get the wrong kind of people. Small might, G-Men told me that FU Seekinji Muscular asked him about us. Fuck school, oh shit. Friendly vampire princess, who that? Insomniac, nasty serial killer who brutalized a bunch of children. Friendly vampire princess, oh shit. Small might, so yeah. Small might, I have an idea but we'd need to contact someone who is notoriously hard to contact. Small might, isn't on the villain network. Small might, isn't a hero or a vigilante neither. Small might or might not be playing solo. Small might, and regularly changes location. Small might, worst of all this isn't a manga so he isn't going to randomly pop up in front of us just because we're in the same city while looking for him. Small might, oh and he might or might not consider most villains to be a kill on-sight target. Small might, and we kinda share the outlook on All Might so he might try to murder us without giving us time to explain for what we did at the USJ. Fuck school, is this a form of 20 questions? Insomniac, oh shit I think I know who you talk about. Insomniac, you are crazier than Miss Explosion. Insomniac, this is why I'm working with you Insomniac, it's never boring. Fuck school, fuck how. Insomniac, I spend half of my life on the internet. Handyman, but still suck at video games. Insomniac, at least I have a life. Handyman, on the internet. Small might, marry already. Handyman, fuck you. Handyman, hashtag team 2 do women. Insomniac, hashtag team caffeine. Fuck school, okay so I have a question. Insomniac, not telling you who the guy is unless Small might admits. Fuck school. No, I just wanted to ask if Small might is Redestro's illegitimate son. Insomniac, Jesus Christ, he said that his parents are thought to be dead. Fuck school, could be a logical ruse. Friendly vampire princess, all I can say is that he has a copy of the Meta Liberation War. Friendly vampire princess, in his study/villain lair. Fuck school, why is? Small might, and a Small might, I don't even like his ideology. Small might, it's quirkist. Small might, but I collect villain stuff. Small might, also asking my own father for an autograph would be super weird. Fuck school, so are you an illegitimate child of Mr. Compress and Eclipse? Small might, I'm so done with you all and I'm not telling you whom I'm looking for. Small might, Insomniac don't tell them. Small might, even if they bribe you with coffee. Insomniac, look at. Small might, write me a private message about whom you are thinking about. Insomniac, look at. Small might, alright I checked it. Small might, Insomniac is correct. Small might, mystery guy is quite chatty so I'll have Insomniac accompany me on the hunt. Small might, holy shit now that I think about MG's quirk, it's going to be ironic if he gets caught in Insomniac's. Insomniac, you know his quirk. Small might, yeah it's pretty cool. Insomniac, how? Insomniac, like, how? Insomniac, this is like the second most mysterious quirk in Japan after All Mights. Insomniac, and maybe Mr. Compress. Small might, I know his quirk. I know where he went to school. I even know his real name. Small might, he just doesn't use it anymore so it won't be helpful. Insomniac, you what? Fuck school, I'm regretting asking those questions. Friendly vampire princess, tell me the truth. Small myth to. FR's changed their nickname to Vampire Princess? Fuck school. Shots fired, shots fired. Small myth, Himi. Small myth to. Small Might, it will be a surprise. Small Might, you like him? Small Might, unless he murders you first. Vampire Princess, oh, pending, speak. Fuck school, spit it out. Small Might, if I get my mom to cook you all something tasty, will you drop the subject? Vampire Princess, immediately and wholeheartedly. Fuck school. Okay, now I'm looking forward to the food that's this good. It is time to make a handful of other talks. There are a few secret chats that he is a part of. He isn't exactly hanging on Jiren when it comes to intelligence gathering. That man is reasonably loyal to whoever's paying him, but you never know who goes after him with a brainwashing quirk. The idea of some truth-enforcing quirk hero coming near the information broker is probably a common nightmare for the Japanese underworld. Satan 2, hello there. Dr. Evil, how can I help you? Satan 2, how many second-gen Numis are ready? Dr. Evil, depends. Dr. Evil, ready as in can fight, or ready as in can fight and follow orders? Dr. Evil, training second-gen takes more time than the quirk implantation itself. Satan 2, fight and follow orders. Satan 2, or at least not attack unrelated people. Dr. Evil, you are still hanging on to that? Satan 2, I literally just came forward with my existence. Satan 2, I have a small fan club of edgy people on the internet. Satan 2, I'm not all for one. Satan 2, I need to uphold an image. Satan 2, political terrorism kinda hangs on it. It is probably better sounding than I do. Not want to kill random people, you nutjob. The doctor is useful, but he is from the Aloes school of evil. Unfortunately, Izuku has to lie a bit. The last thing he wants is the doctor going renegade. Dr. Evil, 7. Dr. Evil, but they aren't high ends like Hellhound. Dr. Evil, top 10s will take them down almost instantly. Dr. Evil, would do all right against regular heroes. Dr. Evil, or as a distraction. Satan 2, for Satan 2, keep 3 of them combat ready at all time during the next 2 months. Satan 2, ready to warp at the moment's notice. Dr. Evil, something I should know? Satan 2, League's member has a childhood friend in a villain group that I will not mention for personal reasons. Satan 2, they just made a watch yourself during the next 2 months comment. Satan 2, implying that something nasty is going to happen. Satan 2, I don't know when or where. Satan 2, but I prefer to have something to cover my retreat if shit hits the fan. Dr. Evil, Japan is big. Satan 2, yes, but I don't like the fact that this came up literally 2 days after we've hit UA. Satan 2, might be a coincidence, but you never know. Satan 2, better safe than sorry. Dr. Evil, understandable. I will do as you ask. Just one conversation left. This time not on the villain network, but on a completely different site. Izuku has to refresh an old working relationship. He can only hope that it is still a thing. Akatani Mikumo, though. Sawatakeo, what is it? Instant answer? That's unexpected. Both names are fake, but, well, that is to be expected considering the circumstances. Akatani Mikumo, need to find someone. Sawatakeo, I assume you can't just ask the police about them. Akatani Mikumo, yes. Akatani Mikumo, they are looking for him too. Akatani Mikumo, I prefer to find him first. Sawatakeo, very well. Sawatakeo, but you do know that the Alliance will want something from you. Sawatakeo, depending on how serious the thing is. Sawatakeo, who is it? Akatani Mikumo, Stendhal. Sawatakeo, are you fucking kidding me? Sawatakeo, no, you most certainly do. Akatani Mikumo, chill down. Akatani Mikumo, it's important. Akatani Mikumo, I can offer things in exchange. Sawatakeo, listen. Sawatakeo, I have you in my contact list because you gave us an info about several notable criminal hideouts. Sawatakeo, like 3 years ago. Sawatakeo, which was pretty cool BTW. Sawatakeo, and we are thankful and consider ourselves to be somewhat indebted. Sawatakeo, but you were silent for a long time. Sawatakeo, and I don't even know who you are. Akatani Mikumo, good. Akatani Mikumo, works both way. Akatani Mikumo, I have some new things. Akatani Mikumo, you won't like them. Akatani Mikumo, but I need to find Stendhal. Sawa Takeo, isn't he dead or retired? Akatani Mikumo, he isn't and that's kinda a problem. Akatani Mikumo, for a lot of people. Akatani Mikumo, he is very active but rebranded. Akatani Mikumo, I hope that someone knows anything about him on your end. Akatani Mikumo, might be even stuff like a coffee shop he frequented. Akatani Mikumo, would have preferred to know any of his associates that might be still in contact secretly or any sort of safe house. Sawa Takeo, give me a moment. He waits for 2 hours. During which he eats breakfast. His mom is wonderful and completely understanding. She even brings it to his study so he doesn't have to stop his scheming and planning. Sawa Takeo, the alliance conditionally agrees. Akatani Mikumo, let me guess. Akatani Mikumo, conditionally as in, depends on what your stuff is. Sawa Takeo, yeah. Akatani Mikumo, okay so I have 2 things. Akatani Mikumo, Enter1 Hero Killer is the Stendhal's new brand. Sawa Takeo. Akatani Mikumo, I know that for certain. Akatani Mikumo, don't question it. Akatani Mikumo, I like his new aesthetic though not exactly what he is doing. Akatani Mikumo, NR2 Corkless Liberation Front is planning something big in public within the next 2 months. Akatani Mikumo, I do not know the location nor the exact time, but it's apparently some major operation. Akatani Mikumo, Eclipse will almost certainly show up in person. Akatani Mikumo, there is a chance, 50-50, that I will be able to warn you a day or 2 before it happens, but I can't promise that and I'll probably not know the location and what they are planning to do exactly. Akatani Mikumo, deal? Sawa Takeo, yes, we'll send you what we know today or tomorrow. Sawa Takeo, are you alright with us telling the heroes that something nasty is going to happen? Akatani Mikumo, what heroes? Sawa Takeo, Eraserhead should be leaving the hospital today. Probably Ingenium too. So either the underground heroes, they were well organized and, in all honesty, rather close with the Alliance, though officially the heroes were after it, or the surface ones. Akatani Mikumo, tell Eraserhead. Akatani Mikumo, I kinda owe him something. Sawa Takeo, for? Akatani Mikumo, not telling by. Shota Aizawa likes teaching. This isn't something that he would admit in public. Then again, there aren't a lot of things that he is willing to admit in public. He enjoys privacy. Especially when the public includes his quote-unquote friends or the students that have the misfortune of being his students. He might have been wounded in the USJ attack, but it isn't the first nor the last time. That is no reason to not show up to school. He is no longer unconscious after all. And he can both walk and speak. What else does he need? He trained the kids well. There is silence in the class within 3 seconds. But wasting time was illogical. Principal Nedzu told me to make an announcement. Eraserhead says, ignoring the way Bakugu flinched at the name. He has no idea what the crazed rat talked about with Bakugu, but it was probably something utterly terrifying. Despite his lack of knowledge, he agreed to not expel Bakugu, despite the kid's illogical charge being the cause of his teacher's injuries. It's about the sports festival. A sports festival? One of the kids asks in visible shock. It is probably another case of students being surprised by something normal. Are they still traumatized by what he did on the first day? Is normal school stuff during the homeroom this surprising? Don't tell me it's gonna get cancelled. Uraraka looks crestfallen. Probably wants to show her parents her progress or something else like that. He doesn't really care. Nedzu decided to go forward with it. Aizawa announces. There were some mixed reactions to this statement. Calling it off would only make the UA look bad and rob you of a precious opportunity to showcase your skills to pro heroes out there. The security will be significantly tightened, however. 5 times more police, numerous heroes on the standby and so on. I was also told to remind you to be cautious. What do you mean by cautious, Aizawa-sensei? Ida and his weird hand movements. Irritating, but he performed admirably during the USJ attack, so Aizawa decides to not be irritated this one time. The league has apparently made it a point to not attack you. Aizawa replies. For which I'm thankful. However, the problem is that the UA's reputation and Nedzu's legendary viciousness deterred a lot of problems from this city, and both those things were weakened by the attack. So for as long as Legion is out there, there's a possibility that another group will get inspired by his achievement. So no late evening lone walks, no unsupervised meetings with people you meet on the internet, and no talking with suspicious people, got it? He prefers to remind them of that. Those are pretty much the baseline rules of living in modern Japan. Kidnappings of kids and teenagers with strong quirks happen. Villain groups either sell them somewhere or end up recruiting them down the line. He is still pretty certain that Mineta will ignore all of that if the villains use a woman as bait. He still didn't quite figure out why he didn't expel the kid during the quirk test. Was he getting soft? Should he remind himself and the kids that he is anything but soft? The school festival will happen in 2 weeks. Aizawa continues. You have time to hone your skills until then. This is going to be one of the 3 occasions to show yourself to the world during your stay in the UA. Do not waste it. He gives them a few seconds to swallow the information. Everyone but Achiko, Azui, Eju, Jiro and Katsuki are dismissed. He announces. There are a few awkward stares and unspoken questions. But then the room, mostly, vacates. The 5 students that remain are obviously nervous. Especially Bakugu. Seriously, what did Nedza do to the kid? He earned some serious scolding and or getting expelled, not lifetime psychological damage. I am here. The living headache announces, while storming into the class. With some answers. The student's eyes lighten up. Eraserhead still doesn't understand the All Might's appeal. Sure, he punched out a lot of heavy-hitter villains, but other than that, his appearance and mannerisms are irritating. Before we start, I wanted to personally thank all of you except for Bakugu. Eraserhead announces. Recovery Girl told me that I would be in a way worse shape if you didn't give me first aid on the field. You did a good job. He could use his scarf to patch a wound, but he happened to lose it after he used it in the maximum range to stop Legion from killing one of his students. At least it was recovered. But after that happened, you and Bakugu heard something that you shouldn't exactly hear. Eraserhead continues. You were told to not mention any details of the attack to anyone by the police. Originally we planned to leave things at that, but there has been a change of plans. All Might wishes to address Legion's claims about his quirk. There is a mixture of shock and curiosity in the faces in front of him. You are allowed to leave this room now. If you stay, you'll learn something that has to remain a secret. You will not be allowed to talk with your parents about it. You will not be allowed to tell your friends about it. In fact, we heavily discourage talking about it between you, as there is always a risk that someone overhears it. Azui raises her hand. If it's such a secret, why do you want to tell us about it, Karo? We've decided that having some students be aware of the situation will be beneficial. All Might announces. If Eraserhead's gut feeling is correct, we meant Nedzu and or Night Eye. All Might recently spent an awful amount of time with the latter. You can also consider this a form of hero training. Even the surface ones sometimes need to hold a secret. In the end, they all decide to stay. Even Bakugu. Eraserhead is faintly proud. Very well. All Might says. Then he deflates in a cloud of steam. Whoa! Kirishima is the most expressive among the students. Azui and Uraraka merely stare. Bakugu stares too, but with something akin to fright in his face. What the hell? All Might pulls up his shirt, exposing his rather horrific wound. This time everyone stares with terror on their face. 6 years ago I fought against a villain. All Might speaks with a solemn tone. I cannot tell you who it was, as the government decided to keep his existence a secret. I have managed to defeat him, but not without losing a stomach and one of the lungs. Ever since then my power has a time limit. One that decreases each time I overuse it, like I did in the USJ. None of the kids utter a single word. That is quite a revelation to be hit with. But Aizawa spots a movement on Kirishima's lips, something that appears to be a wordless, so manly. This year's kids are going to be the death of him. He is absolutely certain of that. We thought that this managed to remain a secret, but it appears that Legion managed to figure it out. All Might continues. And here comes your part in all of that. He looks at Eraserhead, who takes that as a sign to take over. Nedzu decided to hire All Might's other form as a teacher under the name of Yagi Tashinori. Eraserhead says. We are going to be doing our best to stop him from overexerting himself, but it'll probably not work in the end. He makes a loud sigh. You're now aware of the secret and we expect you to help in maintaining it. This means providing diversion when All Might needs to abruptly vanish and change into Yagi Tashinori. Deflecting questions as to why their clothes tend to match up weirdly often and so on. If the absolute worst comes to happen and USJ will happen again, All Might takes over. You'll be aware of the symptoms of me reaching the limits. Which means that you will know when to urge your classmates to retreat, despite me being around. Even without me telling you to do it? Aizawa doesn't say that aloud, but he is pretty certain that Bakugo and probably Kirishima would have rather tried to help All Might. That man's brain is working well enough to know that much. He can only hope that there will be no occasion for that to happen. Zuko, Himiko suddenly speaks. So can you tell me whom we're looking for? Izuku knew that he was going to regret the decision to let her join the search party. He did it regardless. It wasn't exactly favoritism. She had a point when she said that they could use someone skilled in melee. Mine's crew is there too, wearing a hoodie. Then again, they all wear those. And when they left the hero-patrolled part of Hosu, they also added some masks and moved knives to visible parts of their bodies. This isn't a safe place to be in. And it is best to show the locals that they meant business. So after getting his mom's cooking, you also want to get the intel? Mine's crew comments from the sideway. Greedy. She has a point. Izuku says and Himiko beams. We're literally looking for him right now. Together. Looking for someone you don't know is kinda counterproductive. Still greedy but alright. Mine's crew wants to be the only one on the secret, probably for the purpose of some practical joke. We're looking for the hero killer, Himi. That surprises her. That serial killer targeting heroes? She replies finally. He is famous, yes, but why are we looking for him? Isn't he? I mean, I figured out that you'd hate him. She probably isn't up to date with the situation. Hero killer targets corrupt heroes. Izuku replies. Mini thunderbolts. He has a very well-defined idea of a hero as someone who saves others simply because they can, not to gain fame or wealth. He doesn't touch rescue heroes nor the underground ones, but he hits a lot of surface ones that were abusing their position or did something unheroic, such as go after him instead of saving someone in danger and so on. He doesn't mention how many heroes he slew just happened to be aligned with the Hero Public Safety Commission. Stain probably has a personal grudge with it, and if so, then it is one of the many points where their interests are connected. Stain doesn't hit him as someone particularly well organized in terms of gathering information. A lot of his judgments are a product of passion. One hero died because he came upon Stain about to finish a heavily wounded hero, and attacked the hero killer instead of trying to save the other hero. So, Stain judged him as a fake hero, who was willing to abandon a human in need to gain fame through taking down the hero killer. But others are well researched. Did Stain get someone to help him? Someone to find ailing heroes for him? Whoever they are good. Very good. Izuku would like to work with them good. Oh, I see now. Himiko claps her hands in joy. You want to use Mr. Stainey to make people understand that we are after nasty heroes too. And thus fix the bad rep that we got? Yes. Izuku is very happy that their masks just happen to be both voice changers and communication equipment. They are the only people who heard the talk. Having someone overhear Himiko would be catastrophic. Yes, but the problem is that Stain is probably the only person out there who idolizes All Might more than I do. He replies. So I'm kinda afraid that he will just try to stab me when he recognizes me as the Legion. I think I know how to pacify him, but to achieve that I need him to listen to my words instead of trying to stab me. So, keep the League part silent, alright? Alright. Himiko makes a salute, which probably looks super weird to anyone watching them. And since he stabbed Green Gauntlet to death in Hosu 3 days ago, we know that he is here, right? This time it is Mine's crew. Since he always attacks a few people in a city before moving elsewhere? Yes, and we are going to patrol the edges of the hero patrolled zones in Hosu during the late evenings and nights, which is when he does his job. Izuku replies. Although before that happens, we're heading to an old safe house that I managed to track with my masterful information gathering skills. Which meant simply that he knew whom to ask and had something to bribe them with for an answer. He hopes that it is still occupied. Patrolling means danger. Worse, if they fail to find Stain before his next hit, they will probably end up having to shadow the potential targets, and that was an even greater danger. That's when someone contacts them. A message from the villain network is displayed on his mask's glass. Miss Explosion, my baby has its eyes on the location. Miss Explosion, someone's there. Miss Explosion, you'll give me back my explosive baby for that, yes? He switches his mask to a speech-to-text mode and answers her. There is someone on the lookout in front of the abandoned building that is supposedly a local safe house of Stendhal. Unfortunately, they have a hoodie with a mask, so he has no idea who they are. Ironic. We come in peace. Izuku shouts from a, probably, safe distance of about 20 meters. Just want to talk. He used a slightly older voice. He is 16 years old. Nobody would take him seriously unless he would admit that he is the Legion. And if his suspicions about the person in front of them are correct, that would have ended in bloodshed. About? The man answers. He is weirdly relaxed for someone faced by 3 unknowns who were obviously hiding their identities. Probably wasn't alone. Miss Explosion, sniper on the building 100 meters in front of you. Miss Explosion, that's some super cool baby. Miss Explosion, I can make a better one, though, ask them if they want one for me please. Miss Explosion, or give me my explosive baby back. Of course. That explains the lack of fear. And there is probably someone else too, in the process of searching the hideout. Stendhal. Izuku replies. I heard that he had a safe house here. So, the man replies. You must be Akatani Mikomo. That confirms Izuku's suspicions. There is still a minuscule change that during the last 3 years the underground heroes, or other villains, managed to infiltrate the Alliance enough to intercept his inquiry, though. And you must be from the Vigilante Alliance. Neither Himiko nor Hitoshi move, much less speak, but Izuku is certain that they have to be quite surprised by that announcement. I think I mentioned that I wanted to find Stendhal first. Sorry, but if your intel is correct, this is kinda personal. The Vigilante shrugs. If someone finds out what he is doing now, the Hero Commission will have a serious motivation to go after us. Thus far we've mostly stayed under the radar. Besides, it's not like you told us why you want Stendhal. And he isn't going to. What is he supposed to say? Well, we're going to shoot a commercial about murdering people together? The first rule when you have a sniper aiming at you is to not give them a reason to pull the trigger. Fine. Izuku shrugs. But let's make an agreement. If we get him first, you won't intervene. If you find him first, we won't intervene. And whoever finds him, tells the other side about it so that they can stop wasting time on useless search. I can work with. The hooded man replies. You have the deal. Izuku nods and turns his back on him. His comrades follow. Naturally, they don't let him stay silent for long. Okay, so I'm going to ask the question. Mine's crew says. How the hell do you know people from the Vigilante Alliance? You remember the bit where my parents are retired supervillains? Izuku asks. Well, a few years ago my father gave me a list of his old associates that he personally disliked. And I gave it to the Alliance. So we kinda have an, working relationship? Are you sure you are 16 years old? Mine's crew asks. I don't get how you fit so many events in your life. Probably by not wasting 95% of it on cats, coffee and internet, but Izuku decides to be a bit more diplomatic than that. I'm 16 years old but my father started introducing me to the business when I was 8 years old. Izuku replies. I didn't meet an actual villain until I was 11 years old, save for Kurojiiri, Himiko and Tenko, though. Mom was against making me meet bad people too early, so it was mostly theory, and stuff like information gathering, quirk analysis and interpersonal skills. That explains a lot. Hitoshi replies. Himiko chuckles in the background. So, who was that? He hears from the earphone. Of course she would get interested. The guy who told us about Stendhal? The Vigilante replies. Somewhere far away a certain sniper makes a thoughtful face. Plus some bodyguards, I think. Wanted to know if we found anything. And did we find anything? She asks. Not really. Another voice speaks. He wasn't here for a long time. I'm about to leave, so we should be able to wrap this all up soon. Hide yourself well before leaving the building. The sniper says. There is a drone hanging over you. I think they found me before or during the talk. Whoever they are good. And you are a bit too much of a public figure, Holler. It's Crawler, damn it. There is laughter on the network. Stain is notoriously hard to find. It isn't surprising. Everyone wants to get him. Heroes for killing or maiming so many of them. Vigilantes for being a PR risk to them. Local criminals too, because he has no mercy for thugs and villains because while heroes are his target, he will judge villains for lacking a cause if he runs into them. 1 week after the meeting between the Vigilante Alliance and Izuku, he strikes again. The hero in question survived, but was unlikely to fully recover from the wounds and would probably have to end his hero career. Judging from someone releasing evidence of him molesting an intern at his hero agency on the internet after the attack, it is probably over for him even if he fully recovered. Not like Izuku has an issue with that. He would probably be only marginally irritated if Stain actually killed that hero. They switch to tailing the heroes that Izuku decides are likely to be targeted. A tactic that is risky, but not like he has an alternative. At least Hitoshi is good at staying unnoticed. He doesn't even have to try. He really has a low profile, and Himiko is an absolute master in that field. A day before the UA school festival, he gets an unexpected message. On a private hidden chat that he uses to contact his spy in the UA about things that he isn't sure if he wanted the league as a whole to know. UA spy, alright, so I have news. From Blueberry. UA spy, you aren't going to like them. At all. Izuku is watching a film with Himiko and Mustard in the league's hideout. Tenko is playing on a console in the background. Unfortunately, while the film is nice, Izuku has priorities. Smallmate, talk to me. UA spy, yeah, so Blueberry apparently got a promotion in the QLF. UA spy, she joined one of their combat cells. Started soldier training and all of that. UA spy, she now knows a lot more and is willing to talk with me about it. UA spy, I'm sure she won't talk about anything really incriminating, so don't expect me to tell you where to find Eclipse, or any of the QLF bases. UA spy, she is loyal to the QLF, but she trusts me. UA spy, I wouldn't tell you a thing if I thought that this would endanger her or caused lasting damages to the QLF. Smallmite, I'm a late bloomer. Smallmite, spend years as a quirkless. Smallmite, so I know why they do what they do. I don't support it, but I'm not going to fight them over it. Smallmite, I just prefer them to not plant a bomb somewhere near me. Smallmite, or end the society as we know it before we are ready for that. Smallmite, tell me what you feel comfortable about sharing. Spy, UA spy, she is positively terrified of the amount of stuff the QLF amassed. UA spy, they are apparently pretty much drowning in weaponry, explosives, and support equipment. UA spy, and that's just her cell. Smallmite, someone is supporting them? UA spy, no clue, it's not like they explain that to new recruits. UA spy, here comes the bad news. Smallmite, worse than what you already said? Spy. UA spy, you remember that Tokyo bombing campaign 2 years ago? Smallmite, yes? UA spy, they were something like 5 combat cells involved in that. UA spy, largest joint operation of the QLF to date. UA spy, Blueberry said that this time they are amassing FIFTY combat cells. That was a no craps level of intel. Smallmite, are they trying to pull Redestro on Japan? Smallmite, I don't think that it can survive another successful secession. UA spy, dunno, but they have at least 1,000 well-trained fanatics who literally live to see the world burn involved, and that's bad news. UA spy, even worse, they also have some other groups involved. UA spy, she heard mentions of not only combat cells but also some demolition and heavy weapon cells being involved. UA spy, numbers unknown, nature unknown. UA spy, also her cell helped smuggle something apparently? UA spy, they guarded a warehouse with some stuff for a while. UA spy, she has no idea what it was, but she said that a guy with white hair that kind of formed into something like an arrow was involved? Smallmite, oh boy. UA spy, you know him? Smallmite, UA spy, I'm not even surprised by you knowing things anymore. UA spy, who is it? Smallmite, chronostasis. Smallmite, member of the Shy Hasikai. Spy, the heck is that? Small Might, Yakuza Group. Small Might, major player when it comes to trigger production and distribution until recently. Small Might, I figured out that they closed off, but it seems that not all of them kicked the bucket. Spy, this is only going to get worse, doesn't it? Small Might, another talk, GTG, TX for the info. He jumped into another message network. Akatani Mikomo, okay, so I have good and bad news. Akatani Mikomo, it's about the QLF thing. Soatakeo, quick check. Soatakeo, did we have a meeting about 2 weeks ago? Akatani Mikomo, in Hosu, yes, that was me, nice hoodie. Soatakeo, alright. Soatakeo, what is it? Soatakeo. BTW Eraserhead says that if you have a source in QLF he wants in and offers full anonymity plus a lot of favors from the underground heroes. Soatakeo. They are notoriously hard to infiltrate. Akatani Mikomo, nope. Akatani Mikomo. This is a bit of a special situation and not really a source. Soatakeo? Akatani Mikomo. Okay, so in short, a friend with a villainous quirk wanted to be a hero. Saved a few years older quirkless girl from being raped when he was 9 years old. Akatani Mikomo. Then hero rolls in and suddenly they are both responsible for an assault on some poor people. Actually ended up in a juvie. Akatani Mikomo. They bonded over that. She tells him about stuff but he isn't going to tell me anything that might seriously endanger QLF or her. So not a source of info, more like a source of gossip from the organization. Soatakeo. This country is such a shitty place to live SMH. Akatani Mikomo. To quote someone I know, mood. Soatakeo. Okay, so give me the news. Akatani Mikomo. Good thing is that she was recently promoted and joined a combat cell, so she now has some actual intel about the operation to happen. Akatani Mikomo. Bad news is the intel I got. Soatakeo. That bad? Akatani Mikomo. Tokyo bombing campaign included 5 combat cells. Akatani Mikomo. This time they are mobilizing 50 combat cells for a single operation. Soatakeo. Oh shit. Akatani Mikomo. My thoughts almost exactly, it was, oh crap. Akatani Mikomo. Also they got some incredible funding, are pretty much drowning in weaponry, explosives and support items. Akatani Mikomo. And besides the combat cells there are also going to be some heavy weapons and demolition cells involved in the operation. No details on what they are. Soatakeo. I don't like the sound of that. Akatani Mikomo. Also tell Eraserhead that QLF is in the bed with the Shy Hasikai remnants. Akatani Mikomo. They are / were to trigger what UA is to heroics. Akatani Mikomo. Gossip source Cell was guarding a warehouse possibly full of trigger for them, and Chronostasis, major SH member, was involved, but she won't tell us the location. Akatani Mikomo. My intel on SH is old but I know a lot about the way it operated in the past. I know quirks of all notable members of it as they were 1.5 years ago, plus a lot of personal stuff. I might be interested in selling it for favors. Soatakeo. We or the underground heroes will probably take you up on that offer. Akatani Mikomo. GTG, stay safe. The school festival is a pain in the ass, at least in Eraserhead's opinion. It is bad enough that he is constantly overworked, he is a hero, a teacher and, for some reason, a certain rat's main contact in the tight-knit community of underground heroes. And vigilantes. And then his quote-unquote best friend somehow ropes him into being a commentator for the event. He still doesn't know how exactly that happened, and that is bad because without knowing what he did wrong he can't avoid such a mistake in the future. However, the event is now finally over. Eraserhead sighs with relief and vanishes from the booth, not even waiting for All Might to decorate the winner. Endeavor is probably proud of his son. Then he sees a familiar face approaching him. And his newly gained good humor vanishes. You know, I should probably ask how one of the key members of the Vigilante Alliance managed to sneak in. Despite all the additional security, he says while Crawler smiles at him apologetically. But I think I don't care. I'm just happy that the festival's over. Gonna leave something to your imagination, old man. Koichi's smile grows wider. Let's just say that I'm here legally. Yeah. And let's ignore the part where his very existence is illegal. Because he is a wanted man in Japan. So, why are you here? Eraserhead asks. Can we have a talk? Crawler replies. Akatani gave me some concerning intel. Crawler is normally a ray of sunshine in the form of man. If he thinks something is concerning, it probably is. He wasn't a hero, just a kid in the costume, but he survived as a vigilante long enough for Eraserhead to treat him seriously. Fine, but not here. The underground hero replies. The rat is watching. He knows of just the right place, and a part of him wonders how long it would take Present Mike to find him. Cat Cafe, really? Koichi isn't impressed. You have a problem with my choice? Eraserhead asks while a cat lands itself on his lap. They are old acquaintances at this point, and the cat knows that it's a comfortable place. No, not really. Crawler retreats. Not a fight that he can win. I relayed your offer to Akatani. He refused. Tisk, Eraserhead hoped for a different answer. The Quirkless Liberation Front is legendarily hard to infiltrate. To begin with, they only accept quirkless or those who are late bloomers, like Eclipse, and thus spent years being discriminated against as quirkless. It is hard to find someone like that who is willing to work with the heroes. Or with anyone who was quirked. Did he say why? Eraserhead hopes that it was something that can be fixed with a bigger bribe. Apparently his friend with a quote-unquote villainous quirk saved a quirkless girl from rape. Koichi is visibly disgusted with the last word. Dreamed of being a hero, but when an actual hero showed up, the two of them ended up in a juvie together for an assault. So they bonded over that. Said girl has joined the QLF, but she trusts her friend enough to share some gossip. Or perhaps more than that, but said friend will not divulge anything that could actually threaten the QLF or the girl. Stupid prejudices just costed us another hero with a potential. Eraserhead wishes he knew the name of the hero responsible for that. He would do something nasty and creative. Or ask Nedzu to do it for him. Wouldn't be the first time, all things considered. Wonderful. But I assume you have more than that to talk about? Another dose of said gossip? Koichi replies. QLF has much better funding than anyone thought, and is, apparently, drowning in weaponry, explosives, and support equipment. That's a quote, actually. Also, whatever operation they are planning, it will involve Eclipse herself, and at least 1,000 soldiers. Eraserhead almost spits out the coffee when he hears the number. What are they planning to do, storm the National Diet? Blow open the Tartarus? He stares at the vigilante with a shock on his face. The latter is a massive over-exaggeration, but the former could work. Depends on the timing, really. If the attack happens when Endeavor and All Might aren't there, the QLF will probably succeed. Of course, they can't hope to hold the Diet. Nor to escape. So it would be just a collective murder-suicide. No idea. But they are fielding 50 combat cells, and an unknown number of demolition and heavy weapons cells, but we have no idea what those are. Crawler replies. Apparently the Tokyo bombing campaign was carried out by 5 combat cells. So, it's going to be pretty bad. Understatement of the century. Eraserhead is already getting a headache. I'll mention that to Nedzu. If there is a single person in Japan capable of somehow counteracting such an operation without making Eclipse realize that someone sold her, it is the rat. Anything else? Have you ever heard of the villain group known as Shai Hasikai? Crawler asks. Eraserhead shook his head. Contrary to popular opinion, he doesn't know every organization in Japan. His area of operations is centered around Mizudafu. Our friend Akatani appears to know something about it. Crawler continues. Apparently, and I quote, they are or were to trigger what UA is to heroics. They or their remnants also went to bed with QF, as the combat cell of the informant guarded a warehouse full of what we suspect to be trigger. Now that is interesting. There was a steady raise in trigger usage and quality for several years. Many underground heroes tried to crack it, but somehow the group in question eluded them. If the QLF was responsible for the transport, QLF that was also almost impossible to crack from the outside, it would explain a lot of things. I'm going to ask Nedzu about that group too. Eraserhead replies. This might be a breakthrough that we needed when it comes to the trigger distribution. Crawler nods. He battled too many trigger-addled villains to not be looking forward to it. Did he tell you anything more about them? A single name. Crawler replies. Chronostasis. Apparently he was in charge of the warehouse in question. Mikumo claims to have a lot of intel on Shai Hasekai that he is willing to sell for favors. Primarily their quirks and also some personal stuff. But he says that his knowledge is 1.5 years old. Defector from the group? Eraserhead asks. Crawler shrugs in answer. Dunno. Can't get a read on him, really? The vigilante replies. He gave the Alliance a lot of valuable intel 3 years ago, then vanished and reappeared a few days after the USJ raid. He started giving us stuff again, and asked for our help in finding the hero killer, oddly enough. Hero killer? Eraserhead is increasingly interested in Akatani Mikumo. Why? Again, no clue. Crawler shrugs. He says that he needs to find him before the police do. Alliance would have normally told him to get lost, but he made a claim that hero killer was previously our member. He even gave us the name. Boss said that I can't tell you who that was. You're trying to clean it up on your end? Eraserhead replies and Crawler nods. Basically yes. Crawler has the decency to look ashamed. He just admitted that his organization seeks to kill someone to cover up their messes. Then again, Eraserhead works for Nedzu. He isn't one to judge. But we've investigated the connection. Both are very talented melee fighters fighting with blades, and the vigilante's quirk allowed him to temporarily paralyze someone by tasting their blood. Crawler doesn't add it, but it sounded extremely similar to what hero killer's surviving victims claimed. They were all paralyzed by something, but nobody knows what exactly. I was actually investigating the vigilante's old safe house in Hosu when I ran into whom we believe to be our mysterious Akatani Mikumo. Crawler continues. With 2 bodyguards, all wearing identical hoodies and face masks. Awfully polite, but could be because they had a flying drone with a camera that spotted our reinforcements waiting nearby. Somewhere around 1.7 m tall, sounded about 18 to 20 years old? Hard to say, he wasn't talkative. His sidekicks didn't say a word. Also when I asked him if I can talk with you about the QLF stuff, he said that I can, because he owes you something. But didn't specify for what. You think you could organize a meeting for us? Eraserhead decides to ask. Preferably me and a certain detective from the local police. Full confidentiality, no need to get unmasked, can bring his bodyguards on neutral ground, can refuse to answer a question and so on. He is almost certain that the person in question is a villain. Probably a small-time one, but you could never be sure. I'd like to talk about Shai Hasekai. I can ask. Koichi replies. But I'm not going to try to pressure him into it. He and whatever group he represents sound pretty serious. Damn it, I hoped the Thorn Girl would win. Himiko shouts in defeat. Stupid mini-ingenium. Hey, the Endeavor's kid was pretty awesome. Mustard replies with an irritated expression on his face. He deserved to win. Settle this like men. Tenko replies from the background. By murder? Himiko asks and Izuku shivers a bit. Pillow fight. Mine's crew pitches his idea. Izuku growls menacingly when the pillow fight starts and asks Kurogyari to warp him back home so that he can note down everything he noticed about the quirks used in the festival. Sawata talked with Eraserhead. Sawata, he wants to meet you. Would like to bring a friend with him. Akatani Mikumo. Is it the moment when I agree only to discover that the friend is All Might or Nedzu that didn't drink a single cup of tea in a week? Sawata, I'll know. Sawata, some detective. Sawata, apparently they never heard about the Shai Hasekai and want to change that. Sawata, trigger cases on the Rays, heroes and police stumped and all that. Sawata, neutral ground, you can bring your bodyguards, no one will ever know, you can stay behind your mask. Sawata, I already organized like 3 similar meetings with Eraserhead, I can vouch it's no trap, just desperation. Akatani Mikumo, conditional yes. Sawata, define conditional. Akatani Mikumo, I want autographs of all heroes working as UA staff members, preferably on something small, posters or some other merch. Eraserhead and Vlad King can just sign me a piece of paper, they are underground so no merch. Sawata, is this an elaborate joke I'm too vigilant to understand? Akatani Mikumo, No, I'm serious. Saw Takeo, I'll see what I can do. Izuku isn't sure who was more surprised by the news. We what? Mine's crew asks him. Himiko is just staring at him in shock. We are going to meet with Eraserhead and some police detective, because I want signatures of several heroes. Izuku replies with a straight face. Also, this will be a good lesson to you, Toshi, about, let's say, lines you shouldn't cross even as a villain. I promise this will make sense after the meeting. If I didn't see the recording of you vaporizing the number 3 hero, I'd seriously think you are leading us into a trap. Mine's crew sighs. It's nice to be loved. The meeting location is in an abandoned warehouse. Izuku has the entire area surrounding it double-checked for possible traps, and then has Gremlin deploy not 1 but 2 of her drones, now with night vision, infrared and some other things he doesn't understand, as surveillance. He also organized a table and a few chairs and kept Kurogiri on the standby. It is close to midnight. He goes in flanked by Himiko and Toshi, all 3 wearing their infiltration hoodies and face-concealing masks. Himiko also has her knives and Mine's crew has something resembling an assault rifle. Something that was made by Gremlin. Izuku has no idea what sort of thing it is using as ammunition, but it is certainly no normal bullets. Although that is probably one of many options. Figuring Mei's line of thought is something that he has long given up on. The guests arrive soon after midnight. Eraserhead, the guy in a hoodie that Izuku suspects to be his alliance contact. Is it someone important, maybe Crawler himself? And some plain-looking guy that is probably the detective. Time to start the game. Eraserhead has no idea why, but somehow Sir Night-Eye, All Might's former sidekick, has caught wind of the meeting. He suspected Nedzu to be responsible. Night-Eye apparently heard about Shai Hasikai and was leading an investigation into them for years, but without an actual breakthrough. For as far as he knew, they were just a minor criminal group, albeit one quite good in covering their tracks. Eraserhead refused to include another person in the meeting. Sir Night-Eye would be present only as an observer through a camera and an internet connection, with an option to speak to Eraserhead through an earphone if needed. Hopefully he wouldn't have to. Eraserhead isn't sure what he was expecting. The meeting place is rather standard, although most villains preferred to meet in public places. The threat of heroes actually lowered the chance of people coming to blows, but here one side is heroes. Crawler doesn't make any "oh you brought someone new" comment, so the 2 bodyguards, one with knives and one with "wait is that a gun?" are either the same people as those following the informant in Hosu or have very similar body build. Akatani Mikumo is sitting in a chair on one side of the table. There are 2 chairs on the opposite side and one beside it, probably for Crawler who was the middleman. Bodyguards stand behind the man himself. Crawler hands the bag of merch, seriously what sort of villain gets paid in hero merch, to Mikumo, who briefly checks it before handing it to one of the bodyguards. Great, he said. Eraserhead's estimation of his age based on the voice aligns with Crawler's. So what do you wish to know? Shai Hasikai. Eraserhead says. They have a plan. Naomasa has a small item, courtesy of Power Loader, in his pocket. Pretty much a button that, if pressed, will make another item, on Eraserhead's finger, jolt him slightly. Something to signify that the detective noticed a lie, but without warning their informant about his lie-detecting ability. Let's go chronologically. When did you become aware of them? About 3 years ago. Mikumo replies. I was told by someone to investigate them. Can't say why or by whom exactly, but I did so for more than a year. I even joined them for a while. And what were they exactly? Eraserhead asks. A remnant clan of Yakuza. Mikumo replies. They were quite proud of that, trying to uphold the old traditions. Disliked villains, and didn't consider themselves to be a part of them. So no villain names and so on. They had something like 1 to 200 members and were pretty much local thugs until the new leadership took over. New leadership? That sounds like a route to follow. An adopted son of their leader overthrew his father. Mikumo replies. Kai Chisaki took up the villain name of Overhaul and decided to make some major changes. He had both a very powerful quirk and a strange ideology according to which quirks as a whole were a disease upon mankind and had to be eradicated. I think he thought that if he destroys them, he will get rid of heroes and villains, and thus the Yakuza will be able to be restored to its former glory. Trying to turn the clock back at its earnest. Quite ambitious, Eraserhead has to admit. Especially for such a small group. Then again, it's always the small groups, isn't it? I think I can see why he gets along with Kulef. Naomasa comments. He doesn't. I killed him. Mikumo replies, surprising them both, and probably Night Eye too. Which, all things considered, was pretty heroic. I'm going to be honest with you, in a few more years he would be a menace worse than Eclipse or Redestro. He decided to wage war against quirks as a concept, and was on the best way to win it. Bold statement. Eraserhead comments calmly. Especially in front of a hero. He isn't going to make an arrest. First of all, they have to gain more intel. Second of all, Japan has enough problems as it is to be worried about the death of some unknown villain. Eraserhead has priorities. Mikumo only shrugs in answer. Win it? Naomasa seems to be in agreement with Eraserhead. They will eventually try to apprehend Akatani Mikumo, if they get evidence for him killing Overhaul. And if they run out of uses for him. Listen, Mikumo says. I hate Overhaul. Like I really do. If I was locked in a room with him, Eclipse, Redestro and a gun with 2 bullets, I would shoot Overhaul twice. But I have to admit one thing. That man was a genius. Immoral sociopath, but a genius. When it comes to quirk genetics and quirk-oriented biology, he was pretty much a David Shield level of genius, if not more than that. His life's dream was creating a drug capable of rendering someone permanently quirkless. He created and began mass production of a drug that could damage one's quirk factor enough to render them unable to use non-mutant quirks for several days and designed a bullet syringe capable of administering it from a distance. Eraserhead is shocked, but disciplined enough to not show it. Someone created a drug that pretty much made his own quirk, Erasure, utterly obsolete. He doesn't even want to imagine what would happen if villains could simply shoot heroes into helplessness. Although perhaps it would make his students be slightly more interested in quirkless combat abilities. Over-reliance on your quirk is a slow and insidious killer. Part of him still hopes that Naomasa's button broke and the detective is actually smashing it semi-constantly. And that was merely his main work. Mikumo continues. He worked on all manners of quirk-related drugs. If you noticed a sudden improvement in trigger quality something like 2 years ago, that was Overhaul's handiwork. We did. Naomasa notes grimly. Eraserhead remembers the mess that followed. As far as he knew, nobody figured out where the drugs were coming from. You mentioned that he had a powerful quirk. Can you elaborate? He named his quirk after his villain name. Or the way around? Mikumo replies. This quirk allowed him to reassemble biological matter according to his whim on touch. When I was part of the Shai Hasikai, I heard a gossip that he once turned a man inside out for his failure, and in a way that made him remain alive for several hours afterwards. I also know that if cornered he could merge with other people, making himself bigger and uglier but also allowing him to use the quirks of whoever he merged with. Eraserhead notices Naomasa flinching slightly at the mention. He could also alter his own flesh for as long as his brain and hands remained part of his body, although he seemed limited to resetting his body to the state before an injury. That certainly does sound like an Eclipse-level threat. Naomasa admits, and Eraserhead agrees with him wholeheartedly. Kill on touch, self-healing and quirk fusion? Class 5 quirk, no doubt about it. Something the government missed completely. How close do you think he was to creating the permanent quirk erasing drug? He actually created and tested a working prototype plus an antidote for it. Eraserhead forgets how breathing works for a few seconds after that statement. He didn't have the time nor the means to mass-produce either, however. But I know for the fact that he created at least 3 quirk-erasing bullets, and tested 2, destroying the victim's ability to use non-complex mutant quirks. Permanently. But he restored one with an antidote. It is something that could quite literally overthrow the society itself, and not only in Japan, if it was mass-produced. It would return the world to the chaos of the early quirk era, only this time the quirkless would have a long list of valid reasons to discriminate against the quirked, at least for as long as revenge counted as one. There were many groups in history that dreamt of turning the clock back to restore an area that was long gone. If Mikumo wasn't brainwashed into telling them a made-up tale, Shai Hasekai was on the verge of actually achieving that. Do you think that Shai Hasekai could have somehow replicated that drug without Overhaul? Naomasa asks. Overhaul himself wasn't needed for the process. Mikumo replies. I made sure that his lab was destroyed, but there is a high chance that he wrote down the formula for it elsewhere. But I did make sure that a crucial component for the quirk erasing and quirk suppressing drugs was gone from their hands, and I don't think that they could replace it. What was that component? Eraserhead asks. He knows that irreplaceable things like to turn out to be replaceable at the worst possible time. Overhaul's mad genius made him produce quirk-related drugs from the blood of quirked individuals with appropriate quirks. Mikumo says. Eraserhead already knows that the full answer is going to be a headache. And something truly horrible. The source of both drugs was the biological granddaughter of the former Shai Hasekai boss. Since Overhaul required a lot of her blood for his research, he bled her dry dozens of times and then repaired her from the brink of death or from beyond it with his quirk. She was 5 years old when I killed him. Eraserhead suddenly decides that he regrets the fact that Mikumo killed Overhaul. This spared him the occasion to do that himself. Naomasa looks like he is about to vomit. Eraserhead fully understands that. Night Eye somehow maintains his strict silence. He wouldn't interrupt Eraserhead unless it was absolutely crucial, such was the deal between them. But if Eraserhead knows anything about him, he is probably searching the internet for a quirk that can resurrect a dead person simply to have Overhaul suffer some more. He looks like a creepy murderer sometimes, but he has a heart in the right place. There are many horrible things happening to people all around the world. This is probably one of the worst that Eraserhead ever heard about. And if that isn't enough, nobody knew about Overhaul's entire operation. If not for Mikumo, this could continue for years. I'm sorry to ask about it, but where is she now? Naomasa says quietly. Right now? In her room in my house, in her bed with her favorite All Might plushie. Mikumo replies. Finally having a normal childhood. She is not involved in the QLF operation in any way. But I certainly missed at least a single quirk erasing and some quirk suppressing bullets during the assault on the Shai Hasekai's headquarters, so it is possible that the QLF is having the remnants of Overhaul's group work on replicating those drugs. Either that or they are smuggling more standard drugs together to finance the QLF's operations. Their ideology appears to be compatible enough. He pulls a stack of papers from under the table and pushes it towards Eraserhead and the detective. Those are the notes that I made on Shai Hasekai's operations while I was preparing the assault on their main compound. Mikumo adds. You have pictures and profiles of their leaders, including Overhaul himself. Location of their old headquarters and Overhaul's main laboratory. Notes on their drug trade. It's all at least 1.5 years old, but it should give you a general idea on what to look for. I took the liberty of censoring the bits that could point you to me or my associates. But it shouldn't be a lot. Eraserhead quickly schemes through a few pages. He was impressed. Names, pictures or drawings of members in and out of their villain costumes, detailed quirk analysis, notes on why they joined the group and on what sort of people they were. Plus, of course, detailed description of their base and all the other things Mikumo mentioned. There were moments where he seemed to ramble uncontrollably, but it was obvious that those parts left for speculation. Confirmed facts were written down in a clear and concise form. Then Mikumo put something else on the table. This is the hard drive I took from Overhaul's computer. He continues. The one in his lab. He wasn't known for being particularly coherent in his work, but if you give it to someone knowledgeable enough, it should at the very least serve as a proof that what I said about Overhaul's research aren't lies. I suggest someone from the Island. You work with All Might, so that should be easy to achieve. Eraserhead dislikes the idea of asking All Might for something, but if Overhaul's research is as revolutionary as Mikumo is suggesting, David's shield is probably their best bet when it comes to figuring it out. So, unless you are planning to arrest me after all, I believe it's time to bid you goodbye. Mikumo announces suddenly, interrupting Eraserhead's inner deliberations. The Vigilante Alliance knows how to contact me. If you'll need something from me, we'll stick to our side of the deal. Eraserhead speaks. He has no idea who Akatani Mikumo truly is, but it is quite obvious that he is an interesting and potentially useful person. Trying to arrest him now, without even knowing his quirk or how dangerous he could be, will just ruin a profitable relationship. There is also the part where he killed Overhaul, a de facto SSS rank villain in the making. Eraserhead isn't going to try fighting him without knowing what to expect. Okay. Mine's crew decides to speak when they leave the abandoned warehouse. I'm gonna be honest. I thought that my foster parents were the epitome of unrepentant evil, but that Overhaul guy has just made them look like saints in comparison. He has a tendency to do that to people. Izuku replies calmly. Which is why I decided to take you with me. Himiko already knew about him, and, well, we're going to be doing a lot more villainous things in the future, and I prefer to use such occasions to teach League members how to behave when I'm not around. He still has no idea how to explain the concept of lines we do not cross to Tenko and Gremlin. Tenko is a borderline murderous psychopath. Although he has a "I'm brawn you are brained" deal with Izuku, the supervillain isn't planning to give his best friend a chance to operate independently anytime soon. And Hatsume is Hatsume. She was kinda unhinged before the event that drove her to villainy, and now, if anything, she appeared to be strangely stable since the USJ attack. Izuku doesn't like that. It's unnatural and she is probably hiding something. You didn't tell me about the repeatedly bled dry and stitched together part? Himiko comments. She is furious, but hopefully not at him. You were meeting my parents and we were having something close to a first date? Izuku replies. What was I supposed to say? Describe in detail how Overhaul violated my adopted sister for more than a year? Way to set up a romantic mood. You have a point. He can hear her clicking her tongue in irritation. She is in a bad mood, during which she is way less expressive, speaks in a more concise way, and could get really scary. I really wish I could stab him a few times and leave him to bleed out slowly. If Izuku read her mood correctly, this is no exaggeration. She is a bit of a psychopath when angry. So yeah, in short, Izuku decides to comment. I hate the current society. I want to end the current society, because at this point it's too messed up to repair it, so the best option is controlled demolition and then rebuilding it from the ground up. The controlled part is why Izuku panicked when he almost killed All Might. If he died during the USJ attack, Japan would have died with him. They weren't ready for it. Nobody was ready for it, to be honest. And I can't wait to see myself laugh on the throne made of bones of the hero Public Safety Commission members in the burned-out shell of their former headquarters. He continues, with only a bit of melodramatic exaggeration. But yeah, there is stuff we're not going to do, even if it would help us achieve that goal. And I'm going to be very, very angry if someone does them behind my back. Awesome. Himiko is back to her slightly normal self. Probably. So if you end up becoming the post-apocalyptic warlord at the ruins of modern world, can I be your sexy, stripperific, and deadly consort? Mine's crew chuckles in the background. Depends. Izuku replies. Are you going to betray me in favor of some rising hero seeking to end my reign of terror after I make the mistake of sending you after him and you get hypnotized by his bulging biceps? They continue their banter, with Mine's crew joining in soon after, until they reach Gremlin's position. Once she makes sure that heroes didn't put anything dangerous, like localizer or something, in the merch, Kurogiri warps them back to the base. Few hours later, Izuku sees the news. Stain attacked Ingenium in Hosu. The hero was pronounced dead on arrival. What the hell did you do, Stain? He whispers to himself. It isn't like him. Ingenium was a good hero, but not skilled in combat enough to force Stain to use lethal means in self-defense. Stain could have just paralyzed him for a moment and disappeared. What could have happened in that alleyway? 5 days after the meeting with their mysterious informant, Eraserhead is cordially invited to Nedzu's office. The subject of the day, Overhaul. He arrives last. Detective Tsukachi, Nedzu, Sir Night Eye, and All Might, oddly enough, in still skeletal form are there already. David Shield is also present, but as a face on the computer screen. Eraserhead earns a surprised look from the genius inventor when All Might was introduced as All Might. The All-Oaf probably forgot to mention to his friend that Aizawa is within the group aware of his injury. though everyone was suspiciously dodgy on whoever caused it. Everyone is present. All Might announces. I believe that we can start, David. The famous inventor nods. He has bags under his eyes and looks seriously overworked. Eraserhead finds it nice to not be the only sleep-deprived person in the meeting. All right, David Shield replies. So I got the hard drive and I managed to analyze most of its contents with the help of my friend. I believe you know him as a pro-hero, High Mind. Eraserhead doesn't recognize the name. He isn't alone. Well, he is from Europe, so perhaps it's understandable. He became the I-Island leading expert on quark inheritance and genetics after his retirement. The inventor takes a deep breath. We both have one question. Where the hell did you find this? What do you mean? Sir Night Eye is obviously stumped. Who is the author of the files on that hard drive? David asks again. Because he deserves at least 2 separate Nobel Prizes and several consecutive life sentences. Oh dear, thinks Eraserhead. Whether Overhaul's supposed research was genuine was an object of controversy among those involved in the investigation. Eraserhead and Tsukachi suspected that there could be something in it. All Might and Sir Night Eye were skeptics. Nedzu was unreadable. So, the data is genuine? All Might asks carefully. Genuine? Genuine? David appears outraged by the word. Yagi, me and High Mind haven't slept for 4 days straight. And in the end we only slept last night because Melissa slipped sleeping pills into our drinks. Where did you find this? I think I can answer that question. Eraserhead decides to come forward. David's eyes focus on him. I'm an underground hero. I was following a lead about a criminal organization responsible for trigger production and distribution in Japan, and ended up meeting an anonymous informant. He claimed that he stole the hard drive from the laboratory of the head of said organization, previously unknown villain known as Overhaul. He also claimed to have killed said villain earlier. Both claims were verified as truth by Detective Tsukachi's lie detection quirk. Overhaul. I see. David says before making a loud sigh. It's regrettable that a mind such as his didn't lead him to the I-Island. But considering the things he did for his research, it was probably for the best. So I assume that you want to know what exactly I found on the hard drive. That would be best, Mr. Shield. Nedzu is unfailingly polite. Even when visibly impatient and tea-starved. It's clear to me that Overhaul seeked to create a drug capable of rendering someone permanently quirkless, David says, confirming Mikumo's tale with his first sentence. That alone would be pretty revolutionary. There are millions of people out there suffering from quirks that are simply debilitating or way too dangerous to them. But the most important part is the fact that to achieve this goal he practically rewrote our entire knowledge of the biological side of quirks. He pauses for a while, as if trying to organize his thoughts. He's excited that much is obvious. Eraserhead never met him, but he is quite obviously an example of a naive scientist. The quirk erasing drug would be used to deal with such cases, but if Eraserhead's knowledge of the world is in any way correct, it would be merely an afterthought of much worse applications. Okay, so I'll try to quickly summarize what he did, without the jargon. David says before pausing for a second. We always knew that quirks are based on a mix of biology and, to say in the simplest terms, a manipulation of some form of energy. Things such as quirk-suppressing cuffs and many support items are based primarily on distorting, suppressing, or altering such energy fields. Still following me? Eraserhead feels slightly insulted. It wasn't that complicated. Was David used to talking to way less intelligent people? Investors, perhaps? That would explain a lot. Well, that's mostly because our ability to access the biological side of quirks is next to none. David continues his lecture. Our knowledge of conventional genetics reached the level when we can fix many genetic disorders through gene therapies, but when it comes to quirk genetics we are on the level of Mendelian inheritance diagrams. Things simply refuse to cooperate. We failed even when it came to locating any type of genetic markers that would separate quirkless from the quirked, which is why the quirkless diagnosis tends to be based on external characteristics such as the toe joint. This is also why there are no drugs capable of truly altering one's quirk. What about the trigger? Sir Night Eye asks for them all. It works differently. David shrugs. Bodies of the quirked individuals possess certain limiters on their own strength. For example, humans use only a fraction of the full potential of their muscles, as going beyond a certain level threatens to damage them. Trigger essentially lifts such inborn limiters, which influences both their quirk strength and natural strength to a certain degree. It doesn't amplify the quirk itself. Are you saying that Overhaul managed to crack that barrier? Nedzo asks. He is visibly distraught, probably due to his past as a lab rat, if Eraserhead's suspicions are correct. Yes. Yes, he did. There is silence in the room. Ironically enough, he didn't actually figure out any big secret. Known unified biological quirk theory, or something like that in the files. He simply approached the issue from a completely different angle and seemed to have used an overwhelming amount of unethical human experimentation to brute force the blockade. Now that is something. Eraserhead feels way over his head. He comes in to get some drug dealer, and instead he gets an apparent scientific revolution. Was his class somehow involved? For some reason, everything strange that happened to him recently was someone connected to them. He knew they were going to be the death of him, but he didn't mean it literally. Overhaul speculated that the quirk factor of a quirked individuals can be summarized to be the maximum power level their body can handle. David continues the lecture, oblivious to Eraserhead's growing confusion. In other words, imagine the body to be a computer. In this comparison, the quirk factor is a hard drive while quirks are the programs installed on it. They can grow, typically through experience, but they will eventually reach their maximum strength. Another pause. This time to drink some water. The silence in the room is deafening. Eraserhead briefly wonders if computer programs can actually grow through experience, but then banishes the thought. David's shield is obviously too sleep-deprived to make his comparisons fully rational. Overhaul made a theory that quirk awakenings, so the situations when one's quirk spontaneously evolves into a stronger form, are a result of a quirk reaching its maximum possible power level while taking only a fraction of the individual's quirk factor. Plus extreme stress and quirk exhaustion. David picks up where he left and continues the lecture. It's a bit primitive and not fully reliable, but it appears that Overhaul actually designed a certain form of blood test that can measure the estimated strength of the quirk factor and how much of it is occupied. If we confirm it to work, there is a chance that we'll be able to estimate one's chance of quirk awakening. And if we are able to measure those things, we could start testing various medications to see if they can influence the quirk factor or quirk strength reliably. And that's not the most shocking thing we found. Oh great, Eraserhead thinks to himself. Diet supplements for quirks will be a thing. But I think I'm a bit afraid to ask, but what is it? All Might looks like he isn't sure if sending the drive to David was a good idea. Overhaul managed to find a way to trick the quirk factor into accepting foreign data into its unoccupied space. David replies. This is actually the basis on which he tried to construct his quirk erasure drug. However, this technology has an absolutely limitless potential outside of it that he mostly ignored. Imagine a drug that allows you to use someone else's emitter quirk for a limited amount of time. Or, to save the quirk factor space, only a fraction of a quirk. For example, imagine a drug that grants you Endeavor's heat resistance for a few hours. Hell, at some point down the line we might actually learn how to transplant quirks between individuals or alter the way their abilities work. With this technology, the sky's the limit. What can you tell me about the quirk erasure drug? Nedzo asks. Eraserhead is glad that the talk returns to the fields that are actually useful for his job. The informant in question claims that it was created, but Overhaul failed to mass-produce it before his demise. Yes, that would line up with the data on the hard drive. David nods. This is actually an example of such a quirk-based drug. The data on the drive indicates that it was created from the blood of an unnamed girl. The details of her quirk aren't mentioned, but whatever it is, the druggie installs an inferior copy of said quirk to the victim's quirk factor, one that activates automatically and in some way unmakes itself and the quirk factor as a whole. It might be some highly specialized annihilation quirk, but I can't tell you that with any degree of details. This is, from the scientific point of view, absolutely and stunningly brilliant. Eraserhead decides to not ruin the inventor's good mood by mentioning that the girl in question was 5 years old and unwilling. nor the bit with bleeding her dry and restoring her with a quirk. In a hypothetical scenario in which someone uses such a drug against a hero, are you capable of producing an antidote? Nedzu asks the most important question. No one in the room wanted to imagine the result of a QLF sniper hitting All Might with such a bullet. That, honestly, depends on many things. David seems genuinely uncertain. Overhaul's notes are partially deranged and far from organized. If not for the fact that the biological and genetic bits make perfect sense, I'd have discounted them as a waste of time and the work of a madman. They show us the way, but will require a lot of work to catch up to him and work out all uncertainties. Plus, of course, there is also the fact that I'm not willing to throw ethics through the window. David sighs loudly. I estimate that if we really rush it through, we can create an antidote to the quirk erasure drug within 5 to 15 years? Depends on whether I will have access to the girls' blood and quirk erasure drug for testing. 2 to 3 years if we talk about making the antidote for someone under the table instead of making it an official thing. Registering drugs created under the basis of a completely new scientific paradigm is going to be a nightmare. Much smaller nightmare than the fact that Chronostasis, who was apparently Overhaul's lab assistant, was now working with the QF. Eraserhead doesn't even want to think of the implications. Even quirk-suppressing bullets, if mass-produced, are a game-changer. Something to tilt the balance in QLF's favor. After this talk is over, I'm going to give High Mind a laboratory. David continues. Plus the right to recruit 20 people of his choice, regardless of who they are and how much they cost. I'll make them sign the harshest NDA I can think of, and put them to work on the Overhaul's notes. If you find any additional data about his research, be it notes, his assistants or literally anything else, send them to me. I cannot stress enough how important that is. I'll also make the antidotes for quirk suppressants and quirk erasure drugs a priority. But, he says and pauses for a second, looking almost guilty. Let me guess. Sir Night-Eye takes advantage of the pause. The girl? David nods. Yes, having access to her blood would speed up the process immensely. The scientist replies. Worst of all, we don't even know what her quirk exactly is. Without this, I'll have to spend years on trying to approach the concept differently, perhaps through some restoration quirk? Hard to say. This might be hard to achieve. This time it is the detective that speaks. According to the informant, she was 5 years old when he killed Overhaul. Worst of all, she was an unwilling test subject and her treatment was nothing short of horrific. The informant appears to have adopted her and claims that she is happy now, but I can't imagine a 6-year-old girl not reacting with horror to the idea of blood tests after being repeatedly bled to death and then stitched together with Overhaul's quirk. David's face is getting more and more clouded as the words come. The last sentence replaces the clouds with a look of abject terror. If that wasn't enough, the informant stays anonymous, probably due to being protective of her. If we push too much, he might decide that we want to steal her from him and then they'll disappear. I'll try asking. Eraserhead announces. But I'm not going to force the issue in any way. He is too useful of a source and I have a feeling that he will be of even greater use in the future. If he says no, you'll have to accept that. Spy, you there? Izuku yawns loudly. What hour is it? Why is their spy even awake in this ungodly hour? Izuku was focused on having a rather awkward dream in which Eri was riding atop Hellhound and pursuing an apparently terrified, and highly unlikely, duo of All Might and All for One, and then this little. Small Might, this better be important or I'm ratting you out to Nedzu. Small Might, my dream time is crucial. Small Might, not enough sleep and I'll start looking bad. Small Might, like insomnia. Small Might, I'm a criminal mastermind, I need to look dashing. You a spy, yeah whatever. You a spy, check this out. The spy sends him the audio recording. A rather lengthy one. He switches it on. Everyone is present. A voice unknown to him announces. I believe that we can start, David. 15 minutes later Izuku is nothing short of outraged. By both the contents of the talk and the fact that he got to hear it. But he is ready to share only the latter with League's most favorite, and only one, spy. Small Might, wait. Small Might, you didn't. You a spy, I did. You a spy. You have permanent ears in the principal's office, in the teacher's lounge, and in the recovery girl's office. You a spy. For some reason UA makes all important talks in those 3 places. I can understand the first 2 but the third. What? The spy. Courtesy of me and Miss Explosion. Small might how. A spy. My quirk, tongue sticking out basically undetectable. Small might, you magnificent bastard. A spy, I'll take that as a compliment. Small might, mention stuff like that to me first, please XD. Small might, I mean, I'd never say no to an initiative this brilliant. Small might, but I prefer some heads up in case we had to warp in to break you out after a mission gone wrong. You a spy, I probably shouldn't ask, but, she didn't tell you? Small might, you asked her to relay a message. Small might, are you insane? Spy, my bad. You a spy, I barely know you people aside from you, Kurogyri and Tenko. You a spy. Oh, and Himiko, though we didn't interact a lot. You a spy, like, I know that Miss Explosion is crazy and a support engineer, helped me with the technical side of the operation, but I don't know her personally. The spy, where was the last time we hanged out together? Small might, 2 years ago I think. Small might, we were celebrating your birthday and Papagiri baked you a cake. Small might, Tenko accidentally decayed his slice and was on the verge of crying, or killing someone, before you gave him your portion. You a spy, good times. Small might, I paid someone to clean your police records so you could hope to get to UA as a present. Small might, I also gave you a list of instructions on how to catch up on your training since you didn't train for the few years as you thought that your dream was dead. You a spy. It still is, you just gave me a better one. Small might, big mood. You a spy, I'll be sending you the recordings from now on. You spy, now good night. Izuku gets another, this time highly expected message in the morning. Sawa Takeo, okay, so I have a message from Eraserhead. Akatani Mikumo, go on. Sawa Takeo, they confirmed the data on the hard drive as genuine and apparently super valuable. Sawa Takeo, you got David Shield to practically salivate over it. Sawa Takeo, they are still looking through the other data, but as a whole, you just got some very powerful and loyal friends who consider themselves seriously indebted to you. Sawa Takeo, Eraserhead told me that if you want something legal from I-Island, they can arrange it for you, free of charge. Akatani Mikumo, great, but I sense, however. Sawa Takeo, yeah. Sawa Takeo, they are afraid that the QLF has replicated either the quirk suppressants or the quirk erasure drugs and want Island to work on the antidotes just in case. Sawa Takeo, seriously, how the fuck did we come from you can find a bunch of D-rank villains in Building X to international schemes and SSS rank villains in like 3 years SMH? Sawa Takeo, Eraserhead wants to, gently and politely, he said, ask you if there is a chance to borrow your adopted daughter, for a while. Sawa Takeo, blood tests would be invaluable. Akatani Mikumo, he's asking for a lot. Sawa Takeo, yeah, but it's all fully optional. Sawa Takeo, no hard feelings when you say no, they are aware of her circumstances and your anonymity and know that this is a lot to ask for. Akatani Mikumo, I might get some blood samples from her, but that would be small blood samples and not very often. Akatani Mikumo, she mostly got over her acute fear of needles and doctors, boy what a fight that was, but I don't want to push it too much. Sawa Takeo, fuck overhaul man. Akatani Mikumo, yeah with a chainsaw. Akatani Mikumo, my heart fucking broke when she asked me how does one smile because she wants to but doesn't he know how to do it. Sawa Takeo, Jesus Christ, I hope hell exists literally because overhaul. Akatani Mikumo, yeah same. Sawa Takeo, that also would like to know what her quirk is. Akatani Mikumo, nope. Sawa Takeo, why? Akatani Mikumo, listen. Akatani Mikumo, I think I know why they are asking. Akatani Mikumo, trust me, there is no other quirk like hers out there. Akatani Mikumo, Chronostasis will never find her and he will never find a replacement for her. Akatani Mikumo, she already suffered enough because of her quirk. Akatani Mikumo, if I let people know about it, someone might come and try to use her for something. Akatani Mikumo, I'll just tell you that it's a powerful recovery quirk. Akatani Mikumo, She's slowly overcoming the trauma about it and might one day decide to become a healer like the recovery girl. Akatani Mikumo, Eraserhead is free to reserve her a place in some good hero school. 10 years in advance is reasonable for UA or Shiketsuo, those schools are crowded. Akatani Mikumo, but we can't help you now. Akatani Mikumo, I'll have that talk with her when she tells me that she actually wants to have a quirk. Sawa Takeo, speaking for myself for now, but I think that it's highly reasonable. Sawa Takeo, I'll rely your answer to Eraserhead. Izuku switches off the chat and decides to think for a while in silence. Overhaul's data turned out several times more valuable than Izuku thought, which also means that it was a brilliant idea to not hand it to the Dr. Evil, nickname very fitting. Izuku doesn't want to imagine what that man, who was arguably as bad or even worse than Overhaul, could do with that stuff. The data is now outside of his reach. The island is reasonably well protected, so perhaps it is for the best. All Might is running on fumes, and everything is going to burn the day he ends. It is a literal deadline for the League of Villains. Prolonging it would help a lot, but Izuku was honest in what he said. She lacks control, and accidentally killing or incapacitating All Might will simply end everything ahead of schedule. He now has a secret contact with the UA, and has an ear in the Rat stronghold. But he still needs to find the hero killer. The QLF is planning something potentially horrible, and the Hero Public Safety Commission, and, well, Nedzu and the UA, wants him and his league dead. At least he isn't going to be bored.